across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very, very good morning. Welcome back to... Yes, I am still here, despite reports of my imminent demise. Yes, on air yesterday, Julia Hartley-Brewer said, when we heard what Nigel Farage, Richard Tyson, Zia Youssef and the whole of Reform said they want to do with migration, said, you know, if they're going to get elected, that's what the polls suggest, if they are going to actually deliver on the issue of immigration and all the other issues as well, I would happily want to be a part of it. I would leave this job and I would go and be a part of it on a non-party political basis, because I'm not party political. I won't sign up to any specific party. But I think we need all hands on deck, folks. But yeah, that doesn't mean, thanks to some people saying, that I resigned live on air. Got a few years to go till that general election, folks. But hey, shouldn't we all the people who've been talking about this stuff, saying we want action done, shouldn't we actually put our money where our mouth is? People saying they think their local councillors are rubbish. Well, stand for a local election then. Put your money where your mouth is, actually put your time there and make the effort. Maybe that's what we should all do. Maybe that's what we should all be doing. So we actually give a proper mouthpiece in our in our government, in our local government, everywhere, to actually, let's be honest, are not extremist views, are actually the views of the majority people in this country. It's just they're not the majority views of the North London dinner party set that have been sodding in charge for the last 20 years. And that's of both parties, 30 years even. Anyway, lots to talk about today. This is Talk. This is the home of common sense, as you always know. And whether you're listening on DAB Plus radio or on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or on your connected device, it is absolutely fabulous to have your company. Don't forget, if you miss anything of the show, you can go to my YouTube page. We call it cunningly, I don't know how they came up with this, it's brilliant, the Julia Hartley-Brewer Show, and that way you can find it easily. If you hit subscribe, you never have to miss a thing. Coming up in this hat, we are going to talk more about what was happening about 24 hours ago yesterday. Nigel Farage pledging to detain and deport every illegal migrant arrival in Britain, unveiling plans to mass deport up to 600,000 people. Now that works out at roughly, I think, 328 people a day over a 5-year government. But given it would take a couple of years to even start that process, because you're going to have to get to all the laws change, you're going to have to deal with the human rights lawyers, you have to deal with the House of Lords and all of that, then even with a big majority in the Commons, if they did win that, they would only have a couple of years to start doing that. But I want to know whether you think that he can do it. Pledging to deport 600,000 illegal migrants if he wins power. Do you believe Nigel Farage can do this? Tell us why you think he can. Tell us what you think he'll have to do to get that done. And tell us why, if you think he can't, why he won't be able to do it. The Blob, the human rights lawyers, the other MPs, the Lords. Tell us what you think. Give us a call. 0344 499 1000 is the number to get in touch on. You can also text the word TALK and your message to 87222. Get in touch on X at Talk TV. Calls are charged at the national rate. Text costs £1, standard network rate message. Also going to be talking about the energy price cap. Typical household energy bills will rise to £1,755 a year in October under the price cap. That's up £35 on the year, which is very strange because Labour did very specifically promise that we would have our energy bills go down by £300, but they're going up by another 35 quid. Just in time for winter. This is October, November, December. That's when you've got your heating on, right? Because it's cold. Energy bills went down. The cap went down ever so slightly ahead of summer. That's what they do. Anyway, also going to be talking about SpaceX. They have successfully launched their 10th test flight of Starship, the largest rocket ever made. Elon Musk's flagship spacecraft, which will be used for future missions, hopefully to not just the moon in a couple of years' time, but also to Mars, landed safely in the Indian Ocean. Comes after a string of in-air explosions, which bizarrely the modern media class seem to take great joy in, despite the fact this is the future of space exploration, space travel, and the future for our planet. You'd think they'd be cheering Elon Musk on. I wonder why it is that they don't. So difficult to work these things out, isn't it? Anyway, all that coming up, plenty more besides. By the way, just because we are cruel, and this could genuinely, I knew we still have laws against torture in this country, this could genuinely be counted as a possible torture. Our lovely royal correspondent, Rupert Bell, has been set a task this morning. as of 8 a.m, when Netflix launched, for no feasible reason I could work out, a second series of Meghan Markle's, whatever it is, her nonsense series on how to be a very rich woman on telly pretending to cook series. I think that's roughly what it's called. Anyway, we got Rupert Bell to watch it, so you don't have to, and people don't watch it, to be fair, but we thought it'd be quite good fun, and just a chance to be really cruel to Rupert Bell to make him watch it. So we're going to enjoy a little bit later on him spluttering with outrage to him doing that. Right now, he is watching it right now. He'll be four episodes in right now. Hope it's going well, Rupert. Anyway, chuckling in the corner to that, who's not been forced to watch it, and I'm sure will not, is Claire Pearce, or former Conservative Government Advisor, who joins us now. Good morning to you.
Morning.
Were you planning to watch it?
Strangely, no.
My producer this morning, first he said, so have you watched it? I went, of course not. I only managed 5 minutes of the last one before I lost the will to live.
I couldn't even watch 5 minutes of the last one. I had to read up on everybody else's comparisons of it, but I couldn't bring myself to do it.
She's strangely fascinating, but to be in that weird sort of way, and yet, oh my God. Anyway, should we talk about stuff that matters?
Shall we?
Yeah, I mean, let's face it, we'd all deport Meghan Markle if she came back, but there we are. Nigel Farage's plan announced just about 24 hours ago. We knew the details from Saturday, an interview did of the Times. Basically, detaining and deporting all illegal boat arrivals. No bail, no right of appeal. Detaining people, not in hotels, not in houses of multiple occupancy, but in disused military bases, and there are quite a lot. Building new detention centres. A porter cabin never hurt anyone. They've been living on beaches, in tents and beaches. It's better accommodation. But basically, you can get paid $2,500 to voluntarily go. We'll pay your flight. Bye-bye, thank you, don't come back. Or you're going to be deported. If we can't get rid of you to your own country because you fear you're going to be tortured or whatever, then fine, we'll send you to Rwanda or Albania, or the Ascension Islands in the middle of the Atlantic. Corley yesterday was telling us how lovely Ascension Islands are and how they've got a very big runway, same length of runway as Heathrow, so nice, easy place to land a nice big RAF plane. They will do deals with the Afghanistan government, the Taliban and Iran, mullahs, everyone they need to do deals with. There has been a huge sort of clutching of pearls and handbags by the usual suspects about how awful this is. 600,000 migrants, he reckons, they could deport over the period of being in office. Do you think they'll do any of this, and should they do with this?
The first part of your question, will they? No, I think is going to be the short answer. It doesn't matter how good it sounds on paper, and I think a lot of people listening will go, this is exactly what we need. These are the only people.
Cheering it on.
I heard. I was a bit concerned that you weren't going to be here this morning. But when you look at the detail, which is severely lacking in reforms policy, that's where it starts to get tricky. It's all very well to say you're going to detain people. Where are you going to put them?
I'm sorry, but we wouldn't know 4 years out where they're going to build the porter cabins. The government owns loads of land. You can have emergency measures to build a load of temporary detention centres.
But if you're looking at using disused RAF bases, that would be... As well as one and the same RAF Scampton, which Nigel Farage said was an abomination, it was to be used whatsoever and shouldn't be. He also said not long ago that it was going to be impossible to do this. So I want to know what it is that has changed his mind. To have such a...
Did he say it was impossible to...
He did, to deport all these people.
Well, under the current laws. Under the current laws. But he's talking about scrapping the Human Rights Act, temporarily leaving the European Convention on Human Rights and temporarily derogating the Europe Refugee Convention, saying these things are outdated, a new British Bill of Rights. Look, the only issue for me is this is going to take a lot of time.
Yes.
And he's going to be fighting through the courts. I mean, goodness me, the Brexit referendum, we had the referendum in 2016. 2020, we finally actually left. Or was it January 21, I think it was.
It was finally, yes.
Yeah, so I mean, that took a long time when people are fighting it. This lot, the lot who fought Brexit, those will be the same people, exactly the same people, the same sodding flags in their bios. They will be fighting this tooth and nail. But this would mean that reform would have to have a big majority.
Yeah, but it would also have to have some kind of representation in the House of Lords, because once it goes from the House of Commons, it's got to go into the House of Lords. If you don't have any backup and you're looking at all of those Labour ministers that have been placed there, then you're scuppered on that.
But if it's in the manifesto, they can ping pong it, they can delay it a bit, but they can't stop it. If it's in the manifesto, that said, parliamentary convention and constitutional convention is one thing, but we saw John Bercow when he was Commons Speaker throw that out the window. Yeah, but you know what? Then call another election. and win that one. I mean, that genuinely, I think we're in that sort of territory with the British people now. I think the British people, what they gave a very clear message in December 2019. They were not happy with their, I mean, again, even I know people who voted Remain. I thought that Brexit was the worst thing in the world, who still voted for Boris Johnson in 2019, have never voted Tory before in their lives because they were so outraged by the shenanigans of MPs stopping the democratic enactment of a democratic vote. You saying that you don't think it will happen. You worked in the Home Office. You weren't in this particular area of things. For some of it, you were in immigration.
Yes.
You think about. Do you think it should happen? Do you think what he says he's going to do should happen? Yes,
I do. I don't see anything wrong with deporting people who have no right to be here.
And yet this is considered to be some incredibly far-right extreme view by many people.
If that makes me far-right, so be it. I don't believe that people who don't have a right to be here should remain here.
It's a mind-boggling idea.
It's shocking. And the Conservative government didn't help themselves by not getting people onto planes prior to this.
But they didn't get people onto planes because they had this Rwanda plan, and the point at which it perhaps could have gone forward. At the end of the day, you're going to have to remove yourself from every international treaty that says you can't do this. And yet, we constantly see other countries that are able, Denmark, Germany, they're able to. I mean, the big outcry today has been, oh, they're going to do a deal with the Taliban. This is awful. How dare Reform do a deal with the Taliban? Nigel Farage said, we'll pay you to take people back. Even the Taliban have said, no, we'll take it in aid, we're good. I mean, it's an awful, horrific regime. By the way, we shouldn't be taking a single man, particularly women, people who are most suffering under the Taliban. But everyone's going, this is outrageous. Germany deports people to Afghanistan.
It does. It deports criminals back to Afghanistan.
Well, by definition, if you enter this country legally, you have committed a crime. You are a criminal.
I don't see a problem with entering talks with a country who has a government. The problem comes when the UK government doesn't recognise the Taliban as being a legitimate government. So you get over that part of it. Why shouldn't you have conversations with other regimes to take people back?
Do you agree with Nigel Farage when people say, what if someone gets tortured, what if someone gets executed or imprisoned, when he said, who we don't believe has committed a crime other than entering our country illegally or overstaying a visa? The numbers who've overstayed visas is far greater, and people come on those dodgy student visas and just turn up here. They never actually turn up to study. They actually they go and work. They're able to do some legal work, but then they just overstay and no one bothers checking. Now I say more fool us for not bloody well checking the people. Why are we queuing at an airport to have everything checked if they're not actually even going to go, oh, this person is supposed to have left on July the 1st and they don't appear to have left. Let's go and find them. I mean, that seems to me to be a pretty basic job of government. I mean, but at the end of the day, I mean, we can get rid of people if we want to. We should get rid of people if we want to.
Yeah, we should. And we should work really hard with airlines to ensure they will charter flights so that we can take people back. And that tends to be the stumbling ground, is you physically don't have aircraft to get people onto.
People refuse to do the job. I'm sure there are enough aircrew who would be willing to do this at enough airline. I mean, let's face it, I mean, Michael O'Leary will take money for anything. No, but then you'll get the usual stuff. The hope not hate people. They'll be happily, doing this sort of nonsense of boycotting.
And how many are they putting up in their homes?
Well,
how many do they live nearby? Exactly. I can't stand their attitude when it comes to this.
Well, we've got right as we're speaking, we never take these things live for an obvious reason, but Nick Thomas-Symonds, who's a EU Relations Minister, who actually I quite like. He's quite sensible. He can do a good interview, but he's standing behind a podium now called Borders, Bills and Jobs. Well, we have no borders. The bills are certainly coming in and the energy bill has just got higher, and we've got fewer jobs. So not a good choice. Again, read the room, Labour. Read the room. They really, really don't. But he's been saying like, "Oh, this is all crazy. They're not going to do it. They haven't actually thought this through." And they're also saying that the Reform and the Tories are basically opposed to they want to do a deal with the EU to basically stop companies who export to the EU and imports as well from basically paying a whole load of charges, and how awful this is. And the criticisms come from the right, from Leavers, without even looking at the bill. But the reality is, this is a punishment beating from the EU. I mean, let's not go crawling, but in return for not having those bills, we have to align ourselves with all EU rules. Well, Well, then we may as well be back in the EU, and that's going to be what their point is in a few years. Well, we may as well be back in the EU. Yeah. No, we had a vote. It was really clear. Move on.
And I think that's half the problem, is that the majority of Labour ministers and Labour MPs believe that we should have remained in the EU.
And the majority of Tory MPs as well.
Not where I am. No. I surround myself with some really sound people who did vote to leave and wanted to leave properly and fought very, very hard for it. But yes, there are some on the more liberal wing who still believe that we should be better off in. But 17 million people voted to leave, and that's what we should do.
They're still fighting a decade-old battle. It's quite extraordinary, isn't it? Let's talk about a very real battle right now, and that is paying your bills. The energy price cap is going to rise by £35 in October, for over the year, to £1,755 a year for the average household. Now, depending on how big your home is, how many people there are, what equipment you've got in your home. If you've got a dryer, it's going to be a lot more. If you haven't, it'll be a lot less. That's the one. Literally, no, you cannot put one shirt in the dryer. It costs about 20 quid to run. But I mean, we were told by Labour very, very categorically that energy bills would come down. I mean, laughably, because of net zero. It is, in fact, actually net zero that puts the bills up. But this extra 35 quid is actually partly as a result of government policy. So when they said they backtracked on the winter fuel allowance cut, but they're going to help people who are struggling with their bills, some people who are going to get that who weren't. We're paying for that. So if you want pensioners who struggle with their finances to have cheaper bills, then you have to pay more for your energy prices. That's the deal we've got. So that's partly why our energy bills have gone up.
It is, and also this obsession with net zero. And Nick Thomas-Simons, who I also quite like and is very sensible, unfortunately this morning said, yes, isn't it awful, terrible that the price cap is increasing? Just shows we need more renewable energies. And
that was where it all broke down.
Please don't say things
They've got
like
this
that.
idea,
absolutely ridiculous.
because we don't have to rely on international energy markets, because we know that the bills went up. They were roughly 1,200 quid, about £1,000 for an average household in about 2018, 2019. By 2020, before lockdown, they were around the £1,200 mark, and it was as a result of the invasion of Ukraine. There was the impact of that and the sanctions, the two separate impacts on energy prices. But this notion that we won't have to use gas from abroad if we have solar power, wind power. Well, I mean, I'm looking outside the window right now. How's the solar power working today? It's not even windy. How's the wind power working today? Are we using backup nuclear and gas? Yes, we are. Where are we getting that gas from? Well, we're not getting it from the sodding North Sea or from fracking, because we're not doing any of that anymore, not on enough of a scale. So we're still going to be buying. We could literally put up a windmill and a solar panel in every square foot of this country, and we would still need to buy gas.
We would, and if it became too windy, of course, that's when you have to shut them off.
I mean, you've got to laugh.
You have got to laugh, because it is absolutely painful. But this, of course, is Ed Miliband making promises that he simply can't keep. Where's my 300 quid, Ed? Also, where is my owl that you promised me in about 2014?
Do you remember? That was one of my favourite things. Where
still waiting for that.
There was I think it was the Labour Party feed?
Yes.
There was a whole thing about everyone being promised everything. The Labour Party press office feed they put out, and a free owl for everyone. Yeah. And for years I love owls.
So do I. I've been waiting for it.
Want my free owl.
Yeah, there you go.
Anyway, we won't be able to afford to buy an owl because we're all going to be unemployed. The highest level since the COVID pandemic is where unemployment is set to go, just under 5%. Who's predicting that? The Resolution Foundation. They're a bunch of lefties. They do some very accurate forecasting, though, and it's where Torsten, I mean, Mike Graham was talking about him, Torsten Bell, who was the head of the Resolution Foundation and is now an MP, Labour MP, and a senior advisor to Rachel Reeves. At least he knows numbers. He actually, unlike Rachel Reeves, he actually understands economics. Now, I think his politics are, I mean, I'm in favour of us making sure, the whole point of government, I think, you know, should be, you know, about looking after people at the bottom. Unfortunately, I think he seems to think, like most of Labour, that 70% of the people are at the bottom rather than, you know, just bottom 10%. But if your unemployment is going to reach 5%, we saw inflation up to 4.2% yesterday. Yeah. We've got borrowing costs up to a 27-year high. We've got predictions from experts that we are facing a moron premium under Rachel Reeves because such low confidence, the decisions she's made that pushed up our costs. We've got jobs falling, inflation going up, energy prices going up. we've got, I mean, so many people out of work who are not contributing anything, even if they're not on the unemployment rolls.
Yeah.
We are heading for a very, very sticky few years ahead.
But of course, the Labour manifesto was to change, to grow, etc. And then you just
steely
tax business.
Steely focus on growth.
And of course, it's okay because all of those rich people over there are going to be made to fork out even more money. And you just sort of think, at what point do you stop the sixth form politics?
Yeah.
And realise that
there aren't enough of those rich people.
And they're also incredibly mobile and will take their money elsewhere. But if you are going to tax businesses, then businesses will not take people on, which is when you're looking at the unemployment level.
But none of these people have ever run a business.
Well, of course they haven't.
That's the thing. I do think this is crucial.
University to the Labour Party. And now they're in an MP.
I never form my views on like what makes an economy run or how a business should run by thinking, oh, well, you know, I've never run a business. I never employed people.
No.
Of course, I've got no knowledge in this. I ask people who have run successful businesses that got big. I ask people who run small, you know, small successful business, medium. And I ask them. I did loads of work with the Federation of Small Businesses over the years.
They're brilliant.
Always talk to those. And again, most people in this country work for small businesses, not the high street chains or the multinational conglomerates, you know. And you ask them, you know, how do you run your business? They have to take care of every penny. And when you're looking at thousands of pounds extra on national insurance for every employee, ta-da, you're not going to employ more. And people who've only worked in the public sector or a political party don't get it because they've never actually had to make the numbers add up because, oh, well, we'll just get another grant.
Exactly, and what they don't also see are things like hairdressers are not taking on apprentices.
Yeah.
And we've all seen the people, you know, the Saturday girl or boy that started there.
I've had many a haircut from an apprentice in my time.
Absolutely. Everybody has to learn.
Well, before you say anything, not the one I've got now, I'd like to point out.
But they can't take them on because it's now prohibitively expensive to get on to get an apprenticeship into a hairdressing salon.
Because they don't earn any money, so it costs you something.
It costs the company more. So if it's a small salon employing 3 or 4 people, wants to take on an apprentice, not a hope.
And
so
people
we're lose
cut
out.
back on the hairdos and the dyeing and they don't go in for the blow dry for Saturday night because they're not going out on Saturday night anymore.
No,
and it's all those things. Let's talk about one final topic before we go to break and get some calls out. Cancer cases. We're facing a cancer time bomb. A new report from a leading group of charities, a coalition of 60 cancer charities known as One Cancer Voice. They published a stark forecast estimating 6.3 million new diagnoses for cancer over the next 2 decades. And showing the most common cancers, breast cancer, prostate cancer and lung cancer, will hit unprecedented levels with more than 63,000 cases predicted in children and young people. And they're basically going to be soaring to record highs in 2040. One Briton told they have disease every 2 minutes. Now, these are very scary figures, but again, if you put them out over the 15 years they're talking about to 2040, not quite as stark. But you know the one thing they talk about, our survival rates are terrible. You've got less chance of surviving 5 years after pretty much any cancer in this country than compared to pretty much any other, first world nations, certainly any G7 nations. And the one thing none of these people ever point out is the one thing that we have different from those countries, it's not the funding. We do have fewer doctors and fewer hospital beds and things, and we've got a massive waiting list in our country compared with most of these countries. But again, the main thing is that we run a monolithic single supplier of healthcare for most people in this country, which is the NHS. And the countries where the survival rate is off the scale better, like Australia, like Canada, they don't do that. They have social insurance policies.
Yes.
So if those systems are so bad, and particularly for all the poor people who apparently can't afford it, even though the state pays for their costs, so that it's still covered as if it's NHS, if those systems are so bad, how come people are surviving cancer for longer?
They do look after people better. That's not to say the NHS doesn't look after people.
They look after some people better.
Precisely.
But if you're waiting 4 months to start your cancer treatment, they're not looking after you well.
No, they're not. And we have become much better at detecting cancer. We are much better at diagnosing it early. What we're not very good at is then treating said cancer in a timely manner that you would look to have a much better outcome.
Plus, we are going to see more cancers because as you get older, you're more likely to get cancer.
And we're an aging
people getting fatter, and we're an ageing population. To a certain extent, again, it's almost like the dementia. It's kind of a success of our healthcare that we move on to certain other diseases.
It is. But we need to look a lot wider than just using the NHS, and we need to open our minds to something like an insurance system.
Maybe we should do what we should do in every other area. Look at best practice. What are other countries doing that is working well that we're not doing, and maybe do that?
But one of their favourite EU countries, France, has a pretty good health system. It works equally for those with money and those who don't have money.
Yeah, you pay to see a doctor. And you have social insurance. Just saying. Anyway, I'm sure we'll have that debate many more times. I'd love to hear from you, though, in particular about Nigel Farage's pledge to deport 600,000 illegal migrants if he wins power. Do you think he'll be able to do it? If you think he should be doing it? I want to know if you think he can do it. Tell us why you think he will be able to do it when no one else seems to be able to. And if you think he won't achieve that, which Claire certainly thinks he won't be able to do, tell us why. Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. We'll get your calls and your messages up next. This is Talk.
Knife crime, sexual violence, repeat offenders. There's no political profit in tackling that, no donor money, obviously, no headlines, and certainly no lucrative contracts. You know, this is a mayor who's moved heaven and earth to roll out ULEZ cameras, to fine pensioners, delivery drivers, but can't even be bothered to prioritise basic safety. So yeah, I do think there's an issue and there's a conflict of interest.
No, well, you know, I think there's certainly something that needs to be dug about out there. It does seem interesting.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. Let's get straight to your calls coming in thick and fast about what Nigel Farage wants to do in terms of deportations of illegal migrants, not just the boat migrants, but also those who've overstayed their visas. Paul is on the line. He's given us a call on 0344 499 1000. He's in Brighton. A very, very good morning to you.
Hello, Julia.
Hello. You haven't come across Angela Rayner in your walk this morning or anything, no?
No, I haven't. Fortunately, not. But she was in the local paper, sporting her camouflage dry robe, which was
that with a vape in a blow up canoe?
Yeah, it's always the source of some amusement to us people down on Hove, where we see the camouflage, which it'd be very useful in Ukraine, but certainly
less
not
so on a beach in Brighton. Yeah. Anyway, what do you make of what Nigel Farage announced yesterday?
Well, I think Nigel's got all the great ideas, and what I like about Nigel is he cares about his country. Unfortunately, the current regime of Starmer and Yvette Cooper don't care about the country, or don't appear to, and have been so ineffective with their proposals for ending what is essentially an invasion of the UK. Unfortunately, I think the system will be against Nigel, and we'll have the likes of the Sherry Blairs of the world coming out and preventing him from doing what's right for the country.
Do you think he can stand up to them? Because think about the Tories, is they had that as well when some of them did try and do some action on this, but they a lot of them seem to worry about whether people thought they were nice people. Nigel's over that. He's kind of like, you've all been calling me a bigot and God knows what for 30 years. I don't care anymore.
No, I think the problem is, as you rightly say, you're accused of being right wing or a bigot for seeing the obvious that. This country is on its knees financially, and we cannot be a haven to the whole world. And sad as it is that people may be living in desperate times and desperate, and desperate situations, we just cannot afford to be the saviour of the world. We've got, not only have we got, we're paying $2 billion a week in interest. We haven't got. I know income tax isn't the only source of employment. It isn't the only source of revenue for the government, but £2 billion a week. Now, if you just imagine
that's just on servicing our government debt, not paying it off.
Exactly, and it's just not achievable with the amount of people that are employed in this country that are willing to work, that are already here.
Exactly, and I don't think immigration is the only problem we've got. I don't even think it may be the chief problem, but it's a symptom of a lot of the other problems. Paul, appreciate that. So he's worried the whole establishment is going to be against Farage. Let's find out. Oh, here she is, Georgina in London. Just find out what Georgina makes of it. Off you go, Georgina.
Well, good morning, my wonderful girls. I've missed you so much, I can't tell you.
Had a week with the family on the beach.
Well, I've missed you, Julia. I've missed you. And after listening to you yesterday pledging to nail your colours to the mast with regards joining the Reform UK team...
not on a non-party political basis. I'm very strict on this.
Well, I am also going to pledge my colours to help in any capacity that Reform may need me.
Totally having you in charge. I want you in the airport. Off you go.
See my troth, Julia. All we needed was Nigel Farage to have the testicular fortitude to stand up and state the obvious to us, for him to win the hearts, the hope, and invariably the vote that will make him the next Prime Minister. Nigel Farage has stated the obvious, as he's witnessed both our country and its people brought to their knees with countless attacks on our women and girls, with inflation, with cost of living, loss of livelihoods, and unbelievably high taxation. And it's those who work the hardest, Julia, who are penalised, whilst these illegal migrants are treated like VIPs under the very noses of those who are footing the bill and being put at the back of the queue. This is inciting palpable and volatile resentment, the length and breadth of our country, as it's our own country and its people who should be the government's first priority.
Absolutely. See, Georgina, she's right about everything. Put her in charge. Georgina, I'm going to have to let you go because time is against us, but thank you, as always. You're brilliant call. This is Talk. We are the home of testicular fortitude. This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. 10:38 is the time. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Claire Pearce also her thoughts on what my next guest has to say. James Ball is the political editor of The New World. Used to be The New European, but they have broadened their horizons. Good morning to you, James.
Good morning, Julia.
Thanks for joining us. Now, we're all in favour here of what Nigel Farage says he wants to do in terms of mass detentions of illegal migrants, mass deportations of those who've not just arrived on the boats in the past, arriving on the boats in the future, hopefully not for long, but also people who've overstayed their visas, student visas, work visas and have no right to be in this country. I'm assuming you're in favour of people being law-abiding, in favour of proper border controls of any normal country. You must support what Nigel Farage is wanting to do as well, won't you?
I think there's a question of baby in bathwater. I think Farage is going to spend a lot of money and throw out fundamental human rights completely unnecessarily and with a terrible record on delivering anything on immigration. I think Nigel's very good at sort of talking a good game on being tough on immigration, but when you look at the policies he's supported over the last decade, I think he's got away with murder on screwing all of this up.
Such as? I mean, I hate to tell you, I'm just going to throw this out here. Nigel Farage hasn't actually been in power and able to get anything done other than a referendum on Brexit so far.
I know, he's a tricksy boy, isn't he?
Well, no, that doesn't make someone tricksy.
No. Let me put this to you. It's he came up with an electoral pact with the Tories in 2019 because he wanted Boris Johnson's Brexit deal to be done. He gave himself some wriggle room. He never fully endorsed it, but he said, "Hey, this is the thing. We've won the war." He actually said, "We've won the war." That's a quote. Yeah. And that was the deal that created the small boats crisis. That was the deal that got rid of.
No,
it was.
No, it wasn't the deal. No,
there were 300. There were 300 people arrived on small boats in 2018.
Moved from.
There were 1,300.
No. Things completely changed. We know perfectly well things changed when, for instance, the routes via Calais and via Eurostar and everything, those were shut down. More and more people were arriving. We had the Syrian war. We had all these other things. You know perfectly well that this happened. There's been a migration. Sorry, James. There's been a migration crisis across the whole of Europe, and I'm not sure that they had a Brexit Boris deal or Boris Brexit deal.
Okay, so you want to let Farage off the hook for that? That's fine.
Well, no, because it's simply factually untrue that this was caused by Brexit. That is not true.
There is a huge 2020 spike that came with us leaving the Treaty of Dublin. Now, the other thing
we hadn't been deporting anyone under the Treaty of Dublin anyway, pretty much.
The other thing that Nigel Farage did was that he endorsed Boris Johnson's points-based immigration plan. He called it a huge step in the right direction, and that's what led to a huge surge in legal migration that he didn't see coming.
Okay, most people endorsed a points-based immigration plan. That was what people had asked for. And then Boris Johnson, for reasons that still remain an utter mystery to me, thought it was a great idea to invite 1 million people in. I thought that was insane. Nigel Farage clearly thought that was insane. Most British people think that was completely the wrong thing to do. But why are we talking about the past? Nigel Farage hasn't been in charge of anything. You said he's not going to get things done. Why? I want to talk about the policy that
getting what he wants on immigration and it not working and it costing a fortune. So I think what he's offering here is more things that he hasn't bothered to do any homework on, that won't work, that will cost a fortune.
Why won't it work? Why can't you detain people who arrive here? Why can't you hold them in camps? Why can't you build some porter cabin camps on military land? Why can't you deport them? I don't know why any of that is unfeasible.
He can't give you the most basic of details
like
on
what?
This. He can't say what military land he would use. He can't say how he would do any of this. He can't... Look, we've heard this
I'm sorry,
endlessly.
It's 4 years out from the next general election. No possible government in waiting would have that information. You don't need to have that information.
This is his number one issue. He's never delivered anything in his life, and he's got no thoughts on this
He delivered Brexit.
Well... even he says that everyone made a god-awful mess of it. If he was saying, I delivered Brexit...
we have left the European Union. That doesn't mean that the deal was what we wanted.
And no one thinks it works.
I know.
But also...
No, James. No, Brexit does work. And here's how we know it works. Because no government, since we've left, has been able to say, oh, nothing to do with us because the EU won't let us. And we're allowed to get rid of those governments that fail us, which is what people did last time round, and it's what they're likely to do next time round, judging on the polls.
Lower economic growth, higher immigration, and we haven't managed to get any Brexit.
You don't think it's got anything to do with lockdown policy or energy prices or the Ukraine war? No?
I mean, that's an awful lot of excuses.
Isn't it?
I thought that we'd do Brexit...
We locked down our economy.
I mean, look, at least it's helped us produce more excuses than ever before.
Oh,
you know,
James,
we used to blame the EU, now we blame lockdown. I mean, that was 5 years ago, Julia. Come on.
That was 5 years. I hate to tell you, it wasn't 5 years ago. We were still in lockdown in 2021, by the way. The impact went on for far longer than that. I mean, you're rewriting history. I hate to tell you, most of Europe is also in economic doldrums. Have you seen what's happening in France? They're about to lose yet another government, another prime minister, because of the economic difficulties.
And
they didn't vote for Brexit. They didn't vote for Brexit. They've got massive debts, massive unemployment, massive inflation, massive problems, and they didn't vote for Brexit. So why is it Brexit's fault for us?
I mean, you've just described France for the last 50 years there, but if we're playing Let's Look at Europe, plenty of European countries are managing to tackle immigration without throwing out human rights. I think that
Are they? Wait a second. Yeah. Nigel Farage says he'll do a deal with the Taliban.
Look at Sweden.
Yeah, they're deporting people to countries which you lot have been up in arms about. Germany's deporting people to Afghanistan. Apparently, it's terrible if Nigel Farage does it, but it's absolutely fine if what was an SDP coalition did it last year. That's fine.
I'm not happy with deporting to Afghanistan.
Why not?
I'll be honest, but I don't think that we should send people back to the Taliban. I think most of the public are with me on that.
Should anyone who can flee Afghanistan be allowed to stay here then?
No, I think you should check their individual circumstances quickly and send people back if they are not at individual risk. I think that's how
would you assess that? I mean, surely anybody would be at risk, no? I mean, any woman, certainly.
Yes, I think any woman would be at risk.
So anybody who can leave Afghanistan, we should take.
I think we have to look at the individual circumstances, as we have a system to do, and work on it. That is how political asylum works.
Here's the question.
And most of us still think we should do our duty on international asylum.
Yes, and I think there is an argument for that. How many people, roughly, given the huge number of people living in basket case countries with nasty regimes, either civil war or repressive regimes and the like, how many of those many hundreds of millions of people, roughly, to the nearest 10 million, say, do you think we should take here in the UK?
We've never taken that many. We've never taken
I didn't ask you that.
More than about 50,000 a year.
You say we have a duty.
Of course, there are reasonable limits to what.
What would that limit be?
But I think it probably is in the tens of thousands, which is about what we do at the moment.
Well, we take more than we take more.
No, we don't. On asylum, we take tens of thousands a year. That's it. It is a tiny fraction of immigration. It's used to distract from the fact we have an economy that relies on immigration. We have public services that rely on immigration. Most of the housing pressure that we suffer comes from legal immigration that we need.
We need. Maybe we wouldn't need it if we didn't have so many migrants living in the country.
But none of that's got anything to do with asylum. None of that's got anything to do with
a lot of it has, because I think even the Labour government has accepted, by definition, because some of the people they're saying they'd be willing to do the one in, one out policy, which we'll see if that ever comes to. I mean, even if it does come to fruition, it's still not actually getting rid of people in terms of the numbers. They have accepted, clearly by dint of that, they would accept some people who are genuine asylum seekers over people who've arrived here by boat. So they've accepted there are people arriving by boat who are not genuine asylum seekers.
Yes, of course they have. I mean, of course they have.
I mean, a bunch of young men who've travelled across the whole of Europe to get to our country. Julia. They're not genuine asylum seekers, are they?
No, not everyone. About half, slightly over half, our courts find are. And
at least half of the people arriving by boat have already been rejected for asylum in Europe.
Some of them have.
At least
but
half.
We don't have nearly as good information sharing as we used to do when,
well, that's up to the EU, isn't it? They could stop punishing
Well, no, that's up to us. We changed the relationship.
No, there was a democratic vote to leave the EU. The EU could share that information if they wanted to. No, it's not. They are not required not to do it because of the EU. It's entirely their choice.
No, they're not. But we changed the relationship.
It's their choice.
You know, we're asking them to do us a favour after
not to do us a favour, to share information that's useful for both sides. Do you think that Nigel Farage...
It's not that useful to their side. They don't have a stream of illegal migration coming from the UK, do they?
No, but they do have tens of thousands of young men of fighting age arriving in France, for instance. Well, they say 40% of people arriving in the EU would like ultimately come to France. The French have said we've got that El Dorado pulling power because of the ridiculous benefits we give people who arrive here and their ability to stay here forever no matter what, even if they're not judged to actually be worthy of asylum. Those people wouldn't be travelling through France and living rough in Calais if they didn't want to travel to the UK. So it would be in their interests, actually.
Well, that's not how they see it. And we used to have relationships that dealt with all of this.
Well, we did, and they still didn't take them back.
Well, we had far fewer arrivals then.
So did the rest of Europe.
Etc.
And so did the rest of Europe.
Well, we had a few crises in there, but let me stress, we end up talking endlessly about asylum because it's a lot easier to have that discussion than to talk about immigration at large.
We talk about both all the time on this show, and I would cut both.
It's immigration at large that causes the housing pressure, that causes the pressure on services and so on. Asylum is a tiny fraction of it, and we stay on it because it's easier to say, send them home. It's easier to say, fix it, than to reckon with the much more difficult conversations.
It's not a difficult conversation.
Whether we will take the price on immigration.
It's a difficult conversation at your North London dinner parties, James. It's not for the rest of us.
I'm saying asylum's the easy conversation.
No, both conversations are very easy. If mass uncontrolled, which is what it's pretty much been for the last 30 years, immigration to this country brought economic joy and cultural cohesion and diversity is our strength to this country, we wouldn't be in the mess we're in now, would we?
Legal immigration is what's propping the NHS up.
It's not propping the NHS up. It's not the people. When I go to my local NHS hospital, there are more people who don't speak English as a first language because I can hear them speak sitting in the waiting room than people who speak English. The idea that we need foreign workers to prop up our NHS, we could just train enough doctors and nurses ourselves instead of offering those medical school places to the Chinese, Indians and Nigerians who come and pay more.
We could, but we haven't.
We haven't.
I mean, it takes 7 years to train a doctor.
We don't need foreign migrants.
British doctors
we don't
overnight.
need them to prop up our NHS. It's been a political choice to import people rather than train our own people.
But this is what I mean. It's a lot easier to deny that there's a thing. If you start training British doctors today, if you double the number that you train today, we have none for 7 years. Like
You'd bring people in on a temporary basis. There are so many ways of resolving this.
That's how we bring people in.
Yeah.
That's what we do, but it's easier to duck it.
Except you make the claim, James, we're going to have to leave it here way over time. You make the claim, as so many people on your side of the argument do, that we rely on these people. No, it was a choice to rely on these people. The British people don't want to rely on these people. We shouldn't, by the way, be stealing expensively trained medical experts, medical workers from the third world. I think that's immoral for a start. And we've got plenty of young people in our country who've got 3 A stars in science and maths who want to train as doctors and who are banned from doing so by the government and by the BMA. I mean, it's a nonsense. 10:51 is the time. We're going to leave it there. James Ball, I can happily do this debate with you on all aspects of immigration. I don't think the British people are wrong on this one. Political editor of the New World. I'm sorry, Claire, we'll come back to this later. We're going to take a quick break. Up next, we're going to be talking about, finally, a completely successful rocket launch from Elon Musk. But how significant is this for, well, let's face it, the future of mankind? This is Talk.
unveiled this morning was the most radical immigration policy in British history. And that will set the debate now for weeks and months and possibly years to come. I'm pretty immersed in this stuff. I know how radical reform wants to be. I was really impressed by just how far he is pledging to go. What he's talking about here, deporting hundreds of thousands of illegal immigrants, is a massive undertaking.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Talked for far too long with James Ball, for no good reason, all about Nigel Farage's background, I'd say of success rather than failure, and left too little to talk about the, clear success yesterday from Elon Musk with a SpaceX rocket completing a spectacular test flight after a year of, numerous failures. Let's talk about this with space expert Andy Lound. A very good morning to you.
Good morning.
Thank you for joining us. Now, look, it's very interesting how often these SpaceX test flights, something goes wrong, there's an explosion, and there's a little bit of ha coming from an awful lot of people, but really shouldn't, because this is really significant, and it is the future of space travel and possibly for mankind. Explain how significant this is.
Yeah, this is very significant because, of course, very interesting looking at some of the other channels. It was interesting how when there was a failure, they had it wall to wall, and when there's a success, it's sort of, oh, by the way, it was a success.
Yes.
And yet this is really critical. The stage step-by-step testing program, this one was unbelievable. He's got it pushed to the very, very limits, in fact, beyond its normal limits, and it was successful, which now is the next stage can go forward. Developing a spacecraft like this will change space travel forever. I mean, this will be it. This will be a spacecraft that will refuel in space. It can go to the moon, refuel again, go over to Mars, and potentially distribute tons of material to other worlds, possibly or even up to 100 scientists, technicians and engineers to Mars. I mean, think of that, 100
in our lifetime. I mean, that's the thing, because look, these are unmanned space flights because obviously the safety aspect, but NASA plans to use this rocket. It is interesting, isn't it, that Elon Musk can build these rockets quicker, cheaper and better than NASA can, which is quite telling, isn't it?
Yes.
And the plan is to go to the moon, land on the moon in the next couple of years. But in the meantime, Elon Musk does want to send an unmanned probe to Mars.
Yes, he does, because if he wants to send people to Mars, he needs to send the infrastructure to Mars. You don't have the infrastructure already there on the planet. So these unmanned vehicles, these big vehicles, could actually distribute survival equipment, engineering equipment, power systems, habitats could be distributed to the planet in advance.
Water, presumably?
Yeah, well, you'll take some water, but water is available on Mars because there's a lot of water on Mars, so you could actually mine the water there. There's plenty of ice and water probably under the surface, which is why the rovers have been going to Mars and the orbiters are there for a long period of time. It's looking for the water, so you'll be able to use water from the local resources. So that's really, really useful, and that because the water then is hydrogen, oxygen.
And what's the point of us going to the moon? Because a lot of people say, oh, these things cost billions and billions of dollars. What is the point of this? How do we benefit? People starving on Earth. Why are you doing this?
Yeah, a number of reasons. One, the technology alone that you develop from this can be used down here on the Earth, which make life better and easier here. Everyone's whinging about green technology. Well, I'm afraid space science is green technology. So if they want it, this is the best way to get it. Also, we're running out of resources on the Earth, rare earth metals, things like iridium, material like that, helium-3, which is an isotope which could be used in nuclear fusion power stations. That's available on the moon. And we have raw materials, for instance, on the asteroids and places like that. Yeah. So if you don't want to dig up the Earth, I mean, you get saying green people, tree huggers, complaining about one thing or another, but this is one way of protecting your planet by doing it.
But presumably also because we haven't got such a haven't got an atmosphere on the moon. They want to use the moon basically for where we're going to launch space exploration from for Mars.
That's absolutely right. That has a great potential because you have to get to leave the Earth 25,000 miles per hour. But if you actually already get to the moon anyway, then you actually have an easier point to start launching from. Makes life a little bit easier to do that refueling on the moon and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, it is staging
post.
This is absolute game-changing stuff in terms of what he's developing.
This is a complete game changer because once he's got this up and running, and it will be up and running, as you can see, the tests were spectacularly successful. you are going to see the whole solar system open up, not just to human spaceflight, but also to robotic vehicles that could be sent out there on a much more efficient and better basis. I mean, in theory, with his vehicles, he could launch, say, 10 or 15 robotic probes in one go and get them flying out there.
Because it's so large. And bring the rocket back. You're not building a new rocket every single time.
No. This is it. The reusability is really critical here, because that brings the cost down, and the more you do, the more cost effective it slightly becomes.
And you can go. There was some talk about you can go to the moon and turn around like an EasyJet flight. Goes to Paris and turns around in half an hour. I mean, we're talking amazing stuff. I think it's amazing, this wonderful victory in terms of this great success. But I agree with you. Much more coverage when there's an explosion. Very interesting. Andy Lound, space expert and enthusiast, I think it's safe to say, with wonderful stuff. Claire, I mean, this is great stuff, isn't it?
Of course it is. We all need to get behind this, because it's absolutely fascinating and really imperative that we keep looking beyond our own
This
planet.
is the future. This is like saying, well, don't bother going to find the Americas. No, don't
what's
bother.
the point?
What's the point? All that cost. Yeah, this is what human beings do. Anyway, coming up next, going to get the news. Then we're going to be talking to Reform Deputy Leader Richard Tice about why he thinks they will be able to do all those deportations.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. It's just approaching 3 minutes past 11 o'clock. This is Talk. We are the home of common sense with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. Whether you're listening on DAB+ radio, on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube, or on your connected device, it is absolutely fabulous to have your company today. Coming up in the next couple of moments, we're going to talk to the Deputy Leader of Reform UK, Richard Tice, about why he reckons Nigel Farage's pledge to detain and deport every illegal migrant arrival in Britain and mass deport up to 600,000 people is achievable. People keep saying it's not, but start US-style raids to track down illegal migrants, those ICE-style raids living in Britain. Would that be something you would support? I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Do you believe Nigel Farage can and will do all of this? Do you think he'll be stopped by the establishment? Or do you think well, we had a guest, James Ball, saying, oh, he's got a track record of failure, despite he's never actually been in government. So I'm not quite sure you can say that. But tell us what you think. Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. Text the word talk in your message to 87222. Get in touch with us on X at Talk TV. And don't forget that calls are charged at the national rate. Text cost 1, standard network rate message. Also going to be talking about the energy price cap. It's going to go up by 35 quid. Your typical household bill will rise to £1,755 a year. Bearing in mind, 5 years ago, it was around £1,000 a year. Just weird, isn't it? Because Labour did say it would go down by £300 a year. Very, very sure. They were very clear about that. Plus, unemployment is set to reach its highest level since the COVID pandemic, with an increase to almost 5% in the 3 months to August. This comes as a record. This is amazing. 6.5 million people are claiming out-of-work benefits, a rise of 500,000 since Labour came to power. But it's all going terribly well with their very laser focus on growth. I'm sure you'll all agree. I'd love to hear your thoughts on all of those stories. Claire Pearson is also joining me, former Conservative government advisor. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. We are going to get to all those topics. I did want to give you a quick chance to come back on what James Ball, our guest, had to say, political editor of New World. And they used to be the New European. They're complete Ramonas. They're basically still desperately thinking that the one thing that Britain must do is go back into the EU, and that was the biggest disaster. They genuinely don't seem to think that lockdown happened, or that it was worldwide COVID pandemic, or that we've had a Ukraine war. None of that has actually happened. It's all just been down to a Brexit deal that Boris Johnson signed with Nigel Farage's original support of the election. What do you make of that, Clay?
I went into this hoping that he was going to be halfway sensible, ignoring the fact that 2016 had happened. We have moved on since then, but he's just gone back to type, unfortunately. Everything is the fault of Brexit. Nigel Farage, even though he's not been in government, is at fault for everything. Whether you like him or not, I think Mr Farage has been very successful in politics.
Most influential politician of his generation. I think we can safely say. Tony Blair describes him as the best communicator in British politics. So we'll see if that's going to be enough. Well, look, let's put this to Richard Tice, his deputy leader at Reform UK, who I'm delighted to say joins us now. A very good morning to you.
Good morning to you, Julia. And yes, he is the best communicator without question, and has had more influence on British politics in the last 20 years than anybody. You might just like to remind James Ball that Germany's in recession. I think they're still in the European Union.
Yes, this is a fair point. Thing is, being in government isn't just about communication, as we've seen with the trouble that previous Tory governments and indeed the current Labour government is having. This is going to have to be about action. And the reality is that you and Nigel Farage and all the rest of your lot, you've never actually had to deliver on the promises that you've made. OK, last election wasn't a full manifesto. Nigel Farage pointed out no one reads them, no one trusts them anyway. But when you say you're going to detain and deport all illegal boat arrivals, you're going to build all these new build detention centres, and you're going to deport up to 600,000 illegal migrants. That'll include people who've arrived legally on a visa and overstayed. People perhaps have good reason to say, well, yeah, proof's going to be in the pudding. How are you actually going to do it all?
Well, the reality is, first of all, if you don't try, you've got no chance whatsoever. And what we've come up with is a detailed plan. What we've announced is just a summary. There's lots of details behind it of how you are legally entitled and able to detain and deport illegal asylum seekers, illegal migrants. And that's by leaving the ECHR, serving notice, scrapping the Human Rights Act, well intended, but has become a nightmare, and derogating from certain international treaties that are an excuse for the human rights lawyers, basically, to interfere with what I would call common sense decisions. And if we do those things, then we're in a position legally to detain and deport people without the human rights lawyers preventing it. And yes, guess what? In COVID, we built some Nightingale hospitals in a matter of weeks.
Yeah.
Maybe we could do the same. Maybe we could use the army to build those sorts of things with a different design so that they detain people. That's what you do in a can-do situation with a leadership team that has a track record. We've all succeeded in business. We know how to get things done. We know how to make things happen. We know how to negotiate proper deals with construction firms. And guess what? we'll get lots of this organised in the run-up to the next general
Well, again,
election.
some of the criticism has been, we haven't got the details, like exactly where are you going to put these camps? And I have to say, I think that's a fairly risible thing to say. A year out from the election, yeah, I would want to know that detail. We've also had criticism of the cost. The cost has been put at, give or take, £10 billion. We're told by your critics that's not costed. It will cost way more than that. What do you say to that?
Well, Zia Yusuf set out a list of the items. And look, if you want to nickel and dime the costs, fine. We're 4 years out. There might be a thing called inflation, who knows? The real point is whether it costs £500 million more or £1 billion less. The real point is we've got the process and the legal route to be able to do it. You can't spend any of that if you're not allowed to by the human rights lawyers. And the fury and rage amongst the British people that I experience when I talk to people in my constituency. Just this week, I've had 2 meetings with residents in local pubs, and all they want to talk about is how can we stop the boats? How can we reduce legal immigration? It is the #1 issue for the majority of
and
British
that's
people.
what polling has suggested. What do you say to people who say, look, and when things are hard and people are worried about the cost of living and there's been a lot of difficulty in recent years, people turn to scapegoating people, and all the focus is put on migrants, not just illegal migrants but also legal migrants, and that you are part of that. Some of the critics will say, you're just pretending that immigration, whether legal or illegal, is the biggest problem we face in this country. And those critics would say that's not the biggest problem. What do you say to that?
We're leading in every single national poll, and that's because people trust us to sort out immigration, both legal and illegal.
But how big, people can say it's their #1 concern. How big an issue is that in relation to
let me tell you,
the NHS or the economy or the housing issue?
Well, the last time we had a vote on the 1st of May, we won 10 councils, 2 mayoralties and a parliamentary by-election. And we are winning council by-elections every week. So people are voting all the time, and they're voting with their feet, and they're voting for reform. So it is a huge issue. And people can see with these hotels the cost of them, whilst they can't get their own GP or dental appointment, people think it's just patently unfair. And we are a nation that believes in fairness and decency. So it is a huge issue. We've got a track record of being able to deliver it. And some people have criticised us saying, you're going to have to do deals with some nasty people around the world. Well, do you know what? Sometimes you do business with people you may not like. If you want peace, if you want a ceasefire in Gaza, you've got to do a deal with Hamas. If you want a ceasefire in Ukraine, you've got to do a deal with Putin. If you want to send people back to Afghanistan, well, you've got to deal with the Taliban. You may not like it, but it's not our fault we're in the situation we're in.
Well, it is interesting, actually. Nick Thomas-Simons this morning is pointing out, ahead of a speech he was giving behind the podium, saying borders, bills, jobs. On none of those 3 items is Labour doing very well. It was an interesting choice for them for that. But he was saying that we already have deported people to Afghanistan. Germany deports to Afghanistan. So it's a very strange criticism for Labour to say you can't do a deal with the Taliban to deport people to Afghanistan when we ourselves have deported people to Afghanistan.
Exactly, and we're paying them $150 million a year in foreign aid. And in business, you have a plan A, B, C, and D. So that if plan A doesn't work, you've got alternative routes, and that's what we will do. We talked about it yesterday, Nigel and Zia in the press conference, saying we'll have alternative arrangements so that if someone's unable to reach an appropriate arrangement with, then we'll have an alternative plan, whether it's British overseas territories, whether it's Rwanda or Albania.
Yeah, have you asked the people in the Ascension Islands whether they want 20,000 illegal migrants to turn up on their shores?
Not yet, but it is a sovereign British soil, and the reality is that if we have to do things on a short-term basis, a few years on a temporary basis, within the sort of the multi-century existence of the United Kingdom, well, it's a price worth paying to get a major emergency sorted. OK,
what about the issue of women and children? Again, the critics say, you've not tackled that issue, although Nigel Farage was clear, people, women would also be deported. What you say and what actually happens in the reality when on the BBC 6 o'clock news you've got a crying child and a crying mother being led to a plane or God forbid, they are killed when they return home or the like. What do you do then? Does this policy actually survive contact with reality?
Yes, because leadership is about making tough choices and tough decisions. But do you know what the role of the British government is? It's to protect our borders, defend our sovereignty, and ensure the safety of our own British women and girls. That's the most important thing. We're not responsible for the actions of regimes elsewhere in the world, however unpleasant they may be. So, and if we don't make it clear that this applies to everybody, then you'll find all sorts of people playing all sorts of games, and then you're back to square one. We have to be clear and robust here. And if you come here illegally, don't expect to remain here. The reality is, Julia, we don't know how many people are here. Is it 800,000? Is it 1.2 million? But we're making it clear that people can return voluntarily. If not, we will find you and we will deport you.
And how will you find people? By the way, it's probably a lot more than 1.2 million, given that when we left the EU and they got people to sign up saying, oh, we're EU citizens, we've been here for years, we want to stay, and their right to stay. But they had undercounted by 2 million. So I'm pretty sure, and those are people who would have been in the system legally able to work. I'm pretty sure we've got a lot more than that from other countries who we may want to not have here. Are you pledging ultimately, let's say Reform get elected, let's say you do 2 terms. Are you pledging ultimately to remove everyone who has arrived here illegally or has overstayed their student or work or tourist visa to remain here illegally?
Yes, if you come here illegally, you should expect to be deported. But
what about someone who came here 20 years ago? They've got children here. Maybe they've married a Brit. They're. I mean, I'm never quite sure how people are legally working here if they're here illegally, but people, they've got roots in their community. What would you say about that particular case?
You're here illegally. If you're here illegally, you've either got to ensure that you can be here legally through the appropriate routes, or, I'm sorry, but you can't stay. And it was suggested to me, well, what about children of those people who are here illegally? They are not British citizens. You do not have automatic British birthright by birth. So I'm afraid they've got to go because we have to make it absolutely clear. Now, look, with 1.2 million people, look, plus or minus, Julia, clearly we may or may not get down to every last one. We're not completely unrealistic, but it's right to be ambitious. It's right to set that as a target. And I think the British people are supporting reform in this objective.
If you were able to deport, say, 600,000 people over a 5-year term, that's an average of 328 a day. But the reality is, and our callers have already made this point, you're going to be facing the entire establishment of Britain. You know, unless you had in fact, even with an overwhelming majority, you would still find it hard in the Commons to get anything done facing up to the House of Lords, even if it was a manifesto commitment, the blob in the civil service, the human rights lawyers, even the process of ending the Human Rights Act, leaving the ECHR, derogating from the Refugee Convention. They would be long processes. You're left for probably max 2, max 3 years, realistically, to actually deport those people. Are you confident of your ability to take on the blob that has been in charge of this country for the last 20, 30 years?
Yes, we are confident of our ability. And that's why we're setting these plans out in detail now, so that the blob can have their fits and their sort of rants and rages, and they will expose themselves. But ultimately, we're saying to the British people, give us a big majority, and then, yes, we can drive it through the Houses of Parliament. And the advantage of having won 10 councils is we're already getting some examples and experiences of the blob at work. It's extraordinary, it's sometimes shocking, it's sometimes funny. But it gives us an education about how to deal with these people.
Are we going to need mass removals, sackings, if necessary, of people currently in the civil service who don't understand that they are servants to the public?
Quite possibly. If they try and put blocks in the way, then yes, they're going to have to go. They're going to have to be suspended. They're going to have to be fined. What I'd rather they do is accept the will of the British people in a significant way. But we will produce all of this draft legislation using our own lawyers, our own barristers, because we're not going to rely on civil service lawyers. They take too long and they won't do the job properly. So, yeah, look, it's going to be difficult, Julia. No one's saying it's going to be easy. But what I do know is it worth trying? Absolutely. Do the British people want us to try? Most definitely.
That's the truth. Given, though, that we had a vote, very clear vote for Brexit in 2016, it took almost 5 full years to get that through the blob. You're saying you're going to do a better job.
Not reform.
OK. And what do you say to people who say, look, there's concerns about Human Rights Act. You're going to replace it with a new British Bill of Rights. And again, these are the sort of things that usually take royal commissions for God knows how many years to come up with. Are you confident about scrapping human rights law legislation in this country, that will not damage British people?
I'm confident because guess what? You and I are old enough to remember the 80s and 90s. Things were going rather well. We were growing as an economy. We were getting richer. We were using oil and gas. We weren't talking about the price of electricity. True. And guess what? The public services worked rather better. And that was before the Human Rights Act. So yes, life did exist rather well before the Human Rights Act. You could argue that actually the Human Rights Act and other daft legislation afterwards has been responsible for the rise in lawfare by the human rights lawyers, the collapse in productivity, and the reduction in growth and prosperity. So, yeah, I'm not worried about that at all. The British Bill of Rights would come after the scrapping of the HRA so that we can get this done and get on with it.
All right. Well, I'm thinking an awful lot of us are willing you on in terms of getting that job done. Have you got anyone in mind to run that migration deportation policy? Because I've offered my services yesterday.
Oh, I think you'd be a brilliant Empress of Immigration, Julia, if you were serious in your generous offer yesterday. But it might be a competitive application role, Julia, because there's lots of people who are quite keen on getting this done.
Absolutely. Hey, I will defer to the person who can get the job done the most. Just finally, I want to ask you, while we've been on air, Nigel Farage, your leader, has had a press conference with announcing the first Reform UK MSP, member of the Scottish Parliament. Graham Simpson, who's a Tory member of the Scottish Parliament, has defected to Reform. Do you think it's the first of many?
Well, let's wait and see, but we're delighted to welcome Graham Simpson on board. We nearly got our own Ross Lambie elected in a recent by-election at Lark Hall. So look, this is just the beginning. And the truth is that the SNP and Labour are terrified of the progress of reform in Scotland. We've got the Holyrood elections next May, and it'll be very close indeed. And you know, what they realise up there, and they recognise, is that our slogan of Drill Scotland Drill will make people better off and more prosperous.
OK, well, yes, we discussed those policies on the show yesterday as well. Richard, it's a pleasure to talk to you, Deputy Leader of Reform UK. Thank you for that. Claire Pearsall, we've got a little bit more time to have a chat after the break, but your initial reaction to what Richard has had to say?
Lots of things.
As a Tory.
There's a lot of things to pick up on. I don't think you can do mass sackings of people just because they don't agree with you.
No, talking about any civil servant who acts in a politically biased way to try and stop the will of a democratically elected minister should absolutely be sacked on the spot.
OK, I think there'll be issues with that.
There will be issues with it.
All right,
the whole civil service out on strike. I'm not sure that's going to be an issue. I think the country will work very well without them.
And reform-run councils. I think the jury is still out on that one. They are new. They need to have their opportunities to see if they can actually deliver what they say they're going to do. I live now with a reform-run council, so I'm watching very, very closely at how that happens.
Very interesting. Thank you very much for talking to you more about that and all the other topics. I'm going to get to your calls in a few moments as well. And give us a call on 0344 499 1000 about Nigel Farage's pledge to deport 600,000 illegal migrants if he wins power. Do you think he'll be able to do it? What do you make of what Richard Tice said in terms of, look, we may not be able to achieve all, but at least we're going to try. And also, I mean, again, I'm in favour of sacking civil servants, suspending civil servants who won't do the job of serving the elected government. That we really do need civil servants to go back to doing their job they're paid to do. If you want to be a public servant, you have to serve the public, not your own personal political views. Otherwise, go work for someone else. 11:22 is the time. Do keep your calls running in. 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
unveiled this morning was the most radical immigration policy in British history. And that will set the debate now for weeks and months and possibly years to come. I'm pretty immersed in this stuff. I know how radical reform wants to be. I was really impressed by just how far he is pledging to go. I mean, what he's talking about here, deporting hundreds of thousands of illegal immigrants, is a massive undertaking.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very good morning. Welcome back to the show. Lots more I want to talk about with Claire Pissell, but first of all, let's hear from you. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call to have your say on the reform announcement yesterday, the conversation we just had with Richard Tice, Reform Deputy Leader just now. Jay is on the line. He's in Northampton. A very good morning to you, Jay.
Good morning, Julia.
Good morning.
How are you?
Very well indeed. What do you reckon on the ability of Nigel Farage to deport 600,000 illegal migrants and what Richard Tice had to say?
Well, yeah, I'll come to that. I mean, first thing is, it just makes my blood boil. I mean, I love the show. I've only been listening for about 4 months, but I don't know what's going to come first, the general election or me develop our conviction.
I'm with you. I'm with you on the way. Thank you very much for joining us. We're always appreciating you, listener. Thank you.
Oh, no, it's a great show. No, I mean, I just think we've got to that stage now where I just think we have to go with it. I know some people will have to look at it as extreme, but I do think we need to put our own people first. I think, Nigel, people can say he might not be able to do it, but I think we've got to give him the chance. I think, it's the right political angle to take.
Yeah, so the right policy and a politician who has the will and the track record of, he's not just saying it for effect. It's something he's been talking about for years.
No, exactly. I mean, we've got to go with it. I mean, it's the rockets. It has to be the only way. And then you need to look at the knock-on effect of the cost of the migrants, the ongoing cost of, there's court cases, and then they go back again. The cost of that over the period of time. I mean, it might be an initial outlay will be huge. But I think over a period of time, it can only go the other way.
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? I mean, realistically, we know what happened in Australia. We know how simple it is. We know what happened with Donald Trump with his border. The moment you just literally say, no, border closed, you're going to be detained, you're not going to be working on the black market, you're not going to get to stay, you're going to be out of here either back home or Rwanda or the Ascension Islands, job done. That literally within weeks, the boats will stop. There won't be a market. So on that basis alone, what do you make of sort of the Labour and Tory criticism saying, it'll cost 10 billion quid, that 10 billion quid, it'll cost more than that and it's not costed? I mean, is there a price we can put on our national security? I suppose I would respond.
No, there isn't a price you can put on it. I mean, they're quite rightly, the first job of the British government is to put the British people first and look after the sovereignty of our borders. So, unless they can do that, and I completely think they should be, they could do much more with the boats. I mean, you could put the Navy out there, you could put the SBS out there, you could get hold of these dinghies, drag them back into shallow water, burst them. There can be policies where it can be done safely. I just think we're just being fools of, really.
Yeah, I know. I think we are. I absolutely think we are. There's no question at all about this. But then you still get the bleeding heart who say, but the women and the children, and what about the genuine asylum seekers? Are you going to stand firm on this? Do you think Nigel Farage and Richard Tice will stand firm on this when you've got pictures, and they'll be seeking them out, of, women and crying women and children being led to these aircraft and taken away?
At this point in time, I just don't think what other option we've got. I mean, it's the best answer we've seen from anyone. I mean, these clowns in the front bench, they should be working in the circus, really, not at the front bench. It's absolutely ridiculous. Like I say before, none of them have been in business. I don't think you should ever have a Prime Minister again who has a background of a human rights lawyer. I think everyone in that front bunch should definitely have, had some sort of involvement in a business, because, just look at the state of the economy. I mean, like the home of common sense. You only got to apply a bit of that to everything, and hopefully we can turn things around.
Absolutely. Do you know what, Jay? More sense from you. Thank you very much. Great to have you, listener. Great, even better to have you as a caller. I hope you'll call again. Really appreciate that, Jay. Lottie's in Lancashire, wants to have her say. Hello, Lottie.
Hi, Julia. How are you?
Very well. All the better for chatting with you. What do you want to say, my darling?
Well, I think Nigel's played an absolute blinder because can you just imagine in, like, say, 3 years' time or whenever the next general election is, and he's telling all these Afghanis and Iranians that they're going to get sent back.
Yeah.
They ain't going to want to go back. They're going to leave this country like rats leaving a ship.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. There is the thing. There is an idea, isn't there? If they start trying to actually get people who are living in the country, a lot of those people will but they'll disappear, a lot of them, into the black market here in Britain, though. So how are we going to track them down, a lot of them?
Oh, we'll find them. We'll find them. This is not a big country.
That's a fair point.
We'll find them. Find them. It's not like America, is it? They're doing it in America.
Yeah.
And America's massive.
Yeah. And actually, a lot of people, they hide in plain sight because they've got away with it for so many years.
I just can't wait to sit on the White Cliffs of Dover and watching them row back to France.
Maybe, I tell you what, Lottie, are you in for starting up a business with me? We should start doing dinghy rides back to France.
Oh, absolutely.
I reckon there's money to be made.
Dude. Because let's face it, these people are not going to be once picked up and sent back to Iran or Afghanistan or wherever they've come from. They will be fleeing. And once this gets out, the word gets out, we've cracked it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the thing, is I just don't think this is that complicated. It's really simple. Why do they come? Because they think they have a nicer life here, they can work on the illegal market, they get free hotel, and they'll be able to stay. Yeah. You take away those three things, there's no reason for them to come.
You were saying just a moment ago about there'll be pictures of all these mothers and children crying. Well, what we need to do is we need to find all the mothers and children that have been crying over all the rapes that have been happening in this country.
Yep, absolutely.
And back that picture up with their picture.
Yeah. Absolutely. Lottie, thank you. Brilliant call. Thank you very much. 11:31 is the time. We're going to take another break, then we're going to come back with Claire. We'll talk more about that and talk more about some of the other big stories, including this small matter of your energy bill going up, unemployment going up and inflation going up. It's all going terribly well. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is indeed Talk the Home of Common Sense. 11:34 is the time. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Claire Pearsall, former Conservative Government Advisor in the Home Office, is here. I know you hate it when I mention that, given we're talking mostly this today, right? That's yesterday, about this pledge from Nigel Farage to deport 600,000 illegal migrants if he wins power. We spoke to Richard Tyson the last half hour, and he's sort of pretty confident they're going to be able to do what they're going to do. They're going to get the plans. There's going to be more detail. Yeah, it's going to cost money. They may not be able to achieve everything they want to achieve, but they're going to make a bloody good try of it. That's kind of where the British people are, isn't it?
And it was quite interesting. Your caller Jay, who was on just recently, you could sense the sort of resignation in his voice by saying, it's not perfect what's on offer, but I think we need to give them a chance because what else have we got? And you sense that now when you talk to people in the street, is they're really fed up with what's going on currently. They don't know quite if reform are the answer, but at least they are coming out with something that looks like an answer.
But they're more convincing than your lot, who failed again and again, and an awful lot of the big rise in not just illegal immigration, but also legal migration off the scale rocket boosters under it. You know, Elon Musk, SpaceX rocket boosters underneath. Boris Johnson again, unforgivable what he did. But also, I don't think anyone voted for Labour going, I think they'll deal with the migration issue. Of course not. It's not in their hearts, not in their soul. It wasn't. They said they'd smash the gangs. No one thought they were going to do that. They're busy not doing it. They, by the way, are about to be scuppered by the possible fall imminently of the latest French government. The next French Prime Minister is going to have a vote of confidence, probably, let's face it, a vote of no confidence in him. Puts big question marks once again over Emmanuel Macron's ability to run his country as president. And, of course, their ability of the French Parliament to change the law to allow the French to actually go into French waters and stop the boats. They say, we're not being able to do it. It is against the law. We will change the law. But now we will not have a Prime Minister. We cannot do it. I'm paraphrasing. But roughly, that's what they... I need another baguette. And that's roughly what they've been saying, OK? So if they can't change the law, they've predicated everything on, we've done this lovely deal with the French. They're going to change the law. Well, if they're not going to change the law... they're going to get the deal.
This is your problem, is that Keir Starmer has cozied up to Emmanuel Macron, who he thought was going to be there for some time. In French politics, you are never going to be there for a long time. You only have to look at the amount of elections they have and how many governments
Well, presidents last a long time. They've got fixed term.
They do, but look at the government around him.
Yeah.
So you aren't going to have that supporter base in there. And you only have to look at what is going on across Europe, at the difference in voting intentions in different countries now, moving more and more to right of centre parties.
Well, also sensible governments, and so far Friedrich Merz, the new German Chancellor, has been pretty sensible, far more than I'd expected.
Yes.
Closing some of the routes in for pretend asylum seekers at the German border, deportations. He seems to have got to grips with this. He's realised, well, if we don't do it, we're going to lose the election, and then the AfD Alternative for Deutschland will be in. It's as simple as that. And Labour, the Tories pretend they've got the message, but they don't really believe the message. And that's the thing that people have with Nigel Farage. Whether people love him or hate him or trust him or not, they know that he actually means it. He's not been saying this stuff for effect all these years.
No, that's right. But you would look, Greece have now suspended all asylum applicants coming over on small boats from the Mediterranean. So it can be done. There needs to be a
Meloni in Italy is very strong on this.
You have to be able to look at what your country needs, what you need to do for your citizens above
But
everything
uniquely,
else.
when we do it, we're a terrible country. I mean, again, they got the left. You got, the guests who think that the Human Rights Act is when human rights began in this country. No, the Human Rights Act was a British Act of Parliament which incorporated these international human rights, most of which came about because of us. By the way, you're welcome, Europe, because you didn't have any of it. Half of Europe has been ruled under despotic, tyrannical regimes, under fascist dictators. I mean, Spain, Portugal, in my lifetime, Soviet Union. I mean, our forebears, saved Europe from the Nazis. I mean, we've had human rights all that time. We don't need the EU. We don't need the Human Rights Act. We don't need the International Convention on Refugees. We don't need any of that for us to be a good country and to have the rule of law and fair play. We've managed that on our own without any of those things. We gave that stuff to the world.
But I think people in this country also need to stop talking down what we are good or not good at. And I think that you get this kind of rhetoric that, oh, we're a bad country because we're not doing this, that mainly comes from those lefty dinner party
who don't like our
in
country.
Islington. Absolutely. So I don't think it necessarily comes from the outside. I think it comes from the inside.
Well, they're idiots who think we're the only country ever had an empire, never did anything wrong. I mean, they're idiots.
They're just idiots. But they're loud, and I think that we need to sort of
But there are fewer of them than there are of the rest of us who are sensible. And the key thing about them is we know they don't represent the people. Again, when I put the question to Richard Tyson and again to Caller a few moments ago about, well, everyone's going to be strong on this immigration issue, and then when you see the images, it's like let's end food banks also, or let's have welfare, welfare limits, and then you see the woman at the food bank on the BBC 6 o'clock news saying, I can't feed my kid, I've had to miss a meal. Inevitably, it's a woman who's the size of a house who needs to miss quite a few meals, frankly. That's a sidebar, but you'd think they'd find one. You'd think they'd find one woman who looked like she'd actually ever missed a meal. They never do, weirdly. They're too poor to be thin. That's another argument I've never understood, but there we are. But that's when everyone gives in, because they get, oh no, now I'm a bad person, the bleeding hearts take over. But the British people are very clear. Do you remember back in 2015 when we had the Syrian civil war, and it was really, really nasty, and we had loads of Syrian refugees fleeing to Britain, to Europe, and we had the awful stuff, that 2-year-old boy, Alan Kurdi, who was dead on a beach. Yeah. It was a stage photograph. His body wasn't found there. They literally moved. I mean, that's how horrific these people are. They would actually, thousands of little Syrian 2-year-old boys had been killed in Syria, but we didn't see them on a beach, so it didn't plug at our heartstrings. So suddenly we cared about Syrian children dying out of the blue because it affects us, so we then care about it. It tells you quite a lot about the morality of the public on these issues. And that was the point when Angela Merkel, the German Chancellor, they said, well, we'll take everyone from Syria. And then we saw, million-plus people marching across Europe to Germany and to other countries. Every country that took a load of Syrian people has regretted it. A lot of them weren't Syrian, they were pretending to be Syrian. The unemployment rate, criminality rate, absolutely lack of cultural cohesion, lack of integration. It's been an absolute disaster for every country that took a lot of Syrian or claimed to be Syrian refugees. David Cameron at the time was absolutely vilified by most of the media, certainly the BBC and everyone else, for agreeing to take only 25,000 Syrian refugees, only from camps. And that was over 5 years, so only 5,000 a year. Absolutely vilified. When they did polling on it, the public were like, we either think that's the right amount or too many. Yeah. Now, those are people who shout loud, and the commentators, the BBC and Sky and ITV and everyone else finds, and the Guardian and the Times, everyone else, they shout loud on this stuff, but they do not represent the British people.
No, they don't. And I think that the British people are genuinely fair-minded. They don't want people to die unnecessarily. They have a conscience, but what they also want is for their own feelings and needs to be taken into account. And that's where the government has zero empathy for them.
And that's also where the cultural impact of illegal migration and legal migration comes in. I mean, look, we're constantly told, legal migration has been really good for the economy. Again, this just simply, the proof is quite clear that is not the case. But we've got unemployment, according to a left-wing think tank, the Resolution Foundation. The guy who used to run that, Torsten Bell, is now advising Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor. So watch out there, everybody. And as Mike pointed out earlier, was responsible for the Edstone, that brilliant 2050 campaign. Yes. I still can't get over the fact that Ed Miliband was Labour leader and could possibly have been elected Prime Minister of this country. Imagine, that's how, you think our politics is mad now. That's how mad it was then. But unemployment is set to reach 5%. That's the highest level since COVID. And that's the people claiming unemployment, not all the other people who are on sickness benefits and claiming to have anxiety on a Monday morning. Our borrowing costs have surged close to a 27-year high. Our costs of borrowing are higher than Italy and Greece's cost of borrowing. As Caller pointed out earlier, £2 billion a week of our taxpayers' money goes to pay the interest on the debt, just the interest on the debt, not even the debt off. The experts have called this a moron premium under Rachel Reeves. We've got the energy price gap. In October, annual prices going up £35 for the average household to £1,755 a year. I mean, we were told, again, that would go down by £300. We've got inflation going back up to 4.2%. I mean, nothing is going in the right direction.
I think that there were some of us who thought right from the start that Labour didn't really have a secure economic plan.
No.
I do remember sort of 12 months ago, you and I probably spoke about it.
I think we spoke about nothing else for about 2 months before the election.
Yes, quite possibly. I think that there are so many problems. The unemployment rate in this country is shocking. Do we have enough jobs for people? Arguably, yes, we do. There's a lot of inactive people who could be getting off their sofas and actually going out and getting a job. But then we also have the pressure on businesses with national insurance contribution increases, with minimum wage and the thresholds and things like that. So you're not encouraging businesses to take on new startups.
Well, you're making it financially impossible for them to. I mean, it's just, they don't need to be encouraged. It's very simple. What is the extra value of this extra person I take on, and what is their contribution to my business? And it's a simple mathematical equation.
It is, and that's where you're going to see a lot of companies start to shed staff, move out of the United Kingdom, or close down entirely. And that's a real shame. We're going to see some really good small businesses being lost because of this.
And who gets hurt, as always, is the people at the bottom who Labour claim to care about. Well, they used to care about working people. Now they're just going to put everyone on the payroll. No, once everyone's on benefits and 6 people in the corner are going to be paying the taxes to pay for it all, it'll all be fine.
But they can't define what a working person is. I love it when they struggle with
they've got savings. I can't keep track. I mean,
no,
genuinely...
it changes. The definition, the sort of dictionary definition of it changes depending on which minister is out on which day.
Yeah, I mean, again, it is utterly bizarre. If you're not rewarding the people who are doing what they're called the strivers, if you're not making it worthwhile for people to set up a business or go out to work every day, and you're rewarding people who are doing nothing, things are probably not going to work out too well. But no, don't worry. We'll just import some more people and put taxes up and everything will be fine as usual. Coming up, we're going to be talking to a former Treasury Minister. She's also the former Chief Executive of Energy UK about all of those economic indicators, but in particular the energy price cap going up. Given that we were told that energy prices would go down under Labour, we'll be talking to Angela Knight up next. Don't forget to get more of your calls in. 0344 499 1000 is the number to get in touch. This is Talk.
Islamophobia wasn't coined by the Muslim Brotherhood, but they are the ones who popularized it. The Muslim Brotherhood are a deeply anti-Semitic, violent, extremist organization, deeply misogynistic, ties to Hitler and Nazism, and they wanted to use this term Islamophobia to conflate anti-Muslim hatred with criticism of Islam. So Islamophobia was designed specifically to be a tool with which to demonize anybody who criticizes the religion of Islam rather than who attacks individual Muslims.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very good morning. Welcome back to the show. 11:49 is the time. This is Talk. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Let's talk about, well, where all that money is going out of your bank account, out of your wallet. It's going on the energy bills. It's going on the food shop. It's going on your rent. It's going on the mortgage. And none of those things are going in the right direction. And particularly, of course, energy price cap that has gone up. Well, has been announced today by Ofgem that it will go up by £35 for the average household. The average household bill for energy for your gas and your lecky in the next year will be £1,755. That is roughly 755 quid more than it was just 5 years ago. But why? Well, let's talk about this with Angela Knight. She's the former Chief Executive of both Energy UK and also a former Treasury Minister. Good morning to you, Angela.
Hello, good morning.
Thanks for joining. I almost wished away the morning then for a moment. Angela, so, okay, why are our prices of our fuel going up? Because the last energy price cap actually brought it down a little bit, didn't it?
Yes, it did, but it's not going up this time because of fuel costs. It's going up because of network charges, because, you know, you do need to do something about the wires and the pipes. And secondly, it's going up because of what's called the warm home discount. You'll recall that a few months ago, there was a lot of concern about, well, I suppose there's always a lot of concern about how much people pay. But there was also all that discussion about removing the winter fuel allowance for the older population and so on. And so a promise was given to increase the amount of support that there was for the poorer people, known as the warm home discount. Yeah. But it comes on our bills. So some of that extra cost of more people being given a discount sits on our bills.
It doesn't come out of the profits of the energy companies. The other users pay for it. Here's the thing:
Can we do the profits of the energy companies now you've mentioned it?
Well, yeah, but I just want to ask you, you say this is the same as, can I just, no, Angela, one second. When you talk about, you know, the network charge, the cost of, you know, doing some of the work, we have the same thing with the water companies. What a lot of us can't work out is why energy companies, water companies and others always seem to make big profits. They pay their shareholders, everyone gets a big bonus, you know, who the chief executives and and yet they say, but we haven't got any money to do any of these works. But aren't they supposed to use the money we're already paying them for these works?
Yes, it is actually different with the two sectors, but I do appreciate the point that you're making. Now, with electricity and gas, the network of electricity, for example, splits into two. You know, the big overhead pylons, the national grid, that's one company. And then when you've got electricity, you know, to lower voltage that comes around our homes and our businesses, those are other companies. These aren't the people who are actually selling you the gas or electricity. Right. They're a different set of companies. And those that are actually making the money are those who pull the oil and gas out of the ground, and they're different as well. So whilst you absolutely got a valid point, when you talk about energy, there are so many different companies there, and they're all doing different things that one has to be actually quite careful about who you're speaking about.
Okay. But I think a lot of the concern people have is, and again, this isn't, you said the specific reasons why it's gone up this time, and it's not related to wholesale prices, but it does always seem, and this is very similar to when Bank of England, you know, interest rates go up or down, the base rate, is that, you know, just like the banks where, you know, they'll happily put your mortgage up very quickly, but they won't take and they'll take the interest down on your savings, but they won't put the interest up on your savings when the interest rates go up. And the same with energy bills. We don't seem to see the benefits when wholesale prices come down a lot. We only see the cost when wholesale prices go up a lot, and then that cost is built in. We seem to have now got a built-in extra, you know, 700 plus quid on our energy bills. That is a huge sum of money for most people.
And we're now in a situation where your energy bill, most of your energy bill isn't energy. I mean, if you just look at the electricity part, it's only about a third of your electricity bill is actually electricity. With gas, rather more is gas, because so much has been put onto the bill. So you've got the national grid bit, you've got your networks bit, you've got your pipes bit, you've got all the green bit, the subsidy, which is going to renewables. We've talked about the warm home discount and so on. And it is actually, if one unpicks your electricity and your gas bill, your energy bill, and has a look at what goes where, it is very, very surprising just how much doesn't go on keeping you warm or keeping your lights on. It goes on something else.
I think that'll be making a lot of people very, very angry, I have to say. But look, this isn't the only...
That is the policy that's been there for a long time. But what's gone wrong with the policy is now all those other bits have just gone and increased and increased and increased. And this is because we are engaged in, heading for low carbon here in the UK, which is a good thing.
But no, it's not. No, it's not.
But we're doing it.
No, it's not, Angela. I won't have people just say it's not a good thing.
Right.
Reliable, safe and affordable fuel is the greatest thing that's ever happened to mankind.
Julia, you never let me finish my sentence. So I do think that keeping your environment clean is a good idea.
It's not the same thing.
What we're doing about it is the wrong way. We're doing it in an expensive way, and we're doing it in an unreliable way. And every time you build a wind farm, you've got to build something that's reliable to back it up.
Exactly. It's insane policy.
So policy is a daft policy. There are much better ways. The small-scale nuclear power is one example.
Yeah.
You can put it where the towns are, whereas your wind farm's out to sea. So your network costs some more to get your power in from out to sea.
I'm all in favour of cleaning the environment. That doesn't necessarily involve low carbon. Fossil fuels are the reason why we live in the 21st century. One of the reasons why we're all still alive and haven't died at 35. Let me come to something else, because it's not just our energy bills that are still going up. We're also seeing inflation across the board, 4.2%. We certainly see inflation in food. The key thing is a lot of the costs of living that have gone up in the recent years for various different reasons have been, the stuff that people can't really choose so much. But, you might cut some of the luxury goods you might buy in the supermarket, but you still need to eat. You still need to heat your water, and you still need to heat your home and the like. So a lot of the bills that are going up are things that people can't really escape from. We've seen rents going up. We've seen mortgages going up for a lot of people. We're also seeing unemployment going up and likely to go up to its highest level since COVID, 5%. And that's the Resolution Foundation, a left-wing think tank, predicting that. How much of all of this is down to government policy, whether the last government or this current government, and how much do you believe, as a former Conservative Treasury Minister, how much is down to world events, whether it's COVID itself, not the lockdowns, that was a government choice, or whether it's down to Ukraine war? Where's the balance?
Yeah, there is a balance. You're right. I mean, COVID was out of our control. How we dealt with it wasn't, but it was something that turned up. The Ukraine war's out of our control. How we deal with it, we've got some input there. I think that what has happened, though, over the years, and it's very, very clear, Julia, is that the assumptions that governments have taken have been ones which have said and resulted in more and more people being a mixture of not having to work and getting higher social security. Yep. So the actual spending on social security has increased and increased. There's a whole piece about the cost of public sector, particularly public sector pensions. You have nurses saying, I'm not being paid enough, and they've got a point there, but then there's 23% addition goes into a pension,
I don't know anyone in the private sector with that, that's for sure.
Exactly. So you've got a chunk of things which have actually accelerated both how much we spend and on what, which are entirely within successive government controls. Now, you can argue that it's also government policy to say, well, we're going to help arm the Ukrainians. But at the same time, there is a real national security issue there, where I think some of the decisions that have been wrong, social security, if I've mentioned, we've got, a quarter now of the working population isn't working. Yep. That is ridiculous, and that isn't unemployment. That is because of the social security decisions. We have a huge contraction in the workforce and hospitality, which is as a result of that national insurance increase on employers, coupled with increasing the minimum wage, which for some employers meant they had a 20% increase in their wage bill. Yep. You've removed the ability of young people to get their sort of what they call an entry-level job. Yep. And the failure to control public spending now means that how much it costs the government, and so costs us, to service our debt is just going up and up. And there comes a point at which, unless they control the whole of the economy much better, get people working, cut down on social security, make it attractive for business to employ, and more, nobody will buy our debt. We'll find ourselves in the problems of the 70s.
Well, lots of predictions of the weekend that we might end up having to cap in hand to the IMF as we did in '76 as well. I'm old enough to remember that. And tonight, fascinating analysis. Great to talk to you. Former CEO of Energy UK, former Treasury Minister as well. Claire Pearsall's the wisdom. I'm going to get your response to that. Then up next, after the news, we are going to be talking to Tony Smith. He's the former head of the UK Border Force. We like to talk to experts on this show. Does he think that Nigel Farage's plan for mass deportations, mass detentions and removals of illegal migrants is actually going to work? Is it achievable? Well, we'll find out next. Stay tuned.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very, very good afternoon to you. This is Talk. We are the home of common sense, and whether you're listening on DAB+ radio or on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or your connected device, very much appreciate your company. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. We have lots of top guests to come in the next hour. My favourite thing we're going to be doing in the next hour is forcing Rupert Bell, our royal correspondent, all morning to watch the new series. I don't know why they've done the second series, but apparently someone thought it was a good idea, of Meghan's Netflix show. It's called With Love. It was released yesterday and he's been watching it, and I'm sure he's going to be as apoplectic with misery and rage as he was last time we made him do this. Look, basically he's watching it so we don't have to. So thank you for taking one for the team, Rupert. Also, obviously, we're going to be talking about Nigel Farage and his plan to detain and deport every illegal migrant arrival in Britain and mass deport up to 600,000 people. We spoke a little bit earlier to show his deputy, Richard Tice, saying, you know, where there's a will, there is a way, including US-style raids to track down illegal immigrants living in Britain for many years. Meanwhile, the Taliban has said they are ready and willing to work with Nigel Farage to accept Afghans back who've been deported from the UK. And why not? Britain already deports to Afghanistan, and so do the Germans. So why is it that when Nigel Farage says he's going to do it, it's suddenly outrageous and immoral? Plus, we're also going to be talking about Elon Musk, not in relation to his SpaceX successful flight yesterday, but the fact that he has said he's willing to fund legal action against corrupt officials and those who he claims covered up the crimes of British grooming gangs for years. He says he's going to donate to help cases against those who aided and abetted the rape of Britain. I, for one, would certainly support that. All that is coming up. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Let's get some more calls up at the next hour about that pledge from Reform to deport up to 600,000 illegal migrants if they win power. Do you believe he can actually do it? Do you believe he'll be able to stand up to the establishment, to the blob, to the bleeding heart media who will put every crying woman and child on the front page, and then we're all supposed to say, oh, no, let them all stay? Will we actually say that? I wonder. Tell us why you think he can do it. Tell us why you think he might not be able to do it. I'd love to hear your thoughts, whether you support the policy or not. Give us a call, 03444 499 1000. You can text us on 87222. Get in touch on X at Talk TV. Calls cost £1 standard charge at the national rate. Text cost £1 standard network rate message. I normally do that in my sleep. I'm mess it up. Claire Pearsall, as delighted to say, as always on a Wednesday, joins us still. She's a former Conservative government advisor. I do just want to get you, before we go to our next guest, the former head of UK Border Force, to get his thoughts on deportation. You and I have talked a lot about that, but we've also got the issue of the economy. And it is fascinating that we've had an awful lot of people, on the left saying, look, immigration isn't the cause of all of our problems. No, of course it's not, but it's not the solution either. Yeah. And, solving the economy and people worried about the cost of living, that's the focus. I'm not sure that's a good one for Labour, given the cost of living has continued to go up, inflation up, unemployment up, energy bills up. I mean, everything is going in the wrong direction. But we're talking to the former Treasury Minister, Angela Knight, and she was running through all the different things that the government needs to do. What do you make of where we are economically and how Labour are managing?
Where we are economically is in a bad place. It is only going to get worse. And I think she raised some really interesting issues around looking at things like energy, why we are getting this so badly wrong and why we are letting companies get away with paying chief executives an inordinate amount of money for not providing a particularly good service. Yeah. I was stunned when she said only a third of your bill is actually for electricity. So I had to go and have a look at my bill to have a look.
You're brave enough to look at your bill?
Well, it's the one that I
genuinely opened. I'm not a head in the sand kind of girl, but I genuinely just...
It was an unopened email that had been sat there, so that's how brave I was. It's appalling, a standing charge for electricity. A standing charge of £21 for 50 days. Yeah. For what? Yeah. For the thought of supplying me from electricity.
Well, that's one of the issues, isn't it, where people who even use very little electricity, they still end up paying very high bills.
So we've got all of those problems, but is the Labour government going to sort this out? No, because it doesn't understand what it wants its economy to look like. Already ruled out income tax rises. Where's that money going to come from?
Yeah, OK. Very interesting. Thank you very much. Right then, well, where is the money going to come from for the deportation plan of illegal migrants, not just those who arrive on the boats illegally and people who are set to come in the future, but also people who've arrived here on perfectly legal visas, student visas, tourist visas, working visas, and then overstay, some for many, many years. Well, Nigel Farage says he's going to deport them all, well, as many as he can. He thinks up to 600,000 in his first term in office if he gets elected. He said that included women and children. Interesting. Breaking news in the last few minutes. Nigel Farage has rode back on that at his press conference. He said that women and children will not be included in deportations as part of that plan. We shall wait and get more detail on that. But let's talk about all of that right now with Tony Smith. He's the former head of the UK Border Force and joins us now. A very, very good morning to you. Afternoon to you, sorry.
Good afternoon, Julia.
I want to get to the detail of what Nigel Farage had said in just a few moments, but just in terms of, let's just go through the things that he says he wants to do. He wants to basically detain all illegal boat arrivals once he is in office. No bail, no right of appeal. So the people who arrive, and presumably people who are, already in the hotels and in the houses of multiple occupancy, I mean, I don't believe we're going to get all those people out of hotels in the next 3 years or 4 years, that they would then be put into detention centres ready to be deported. Do you think that itself is possible?
Well, so I would split the new arrivals from those already here, Julia. I think it's certainly feasible for new arrivals to do that, but we need to start pouring concrete now, and we need to start changing our legislative framework now, because as you know, at the moment, they come in through Manston, which is only a short-term holding facility by and large, and we can only hold them there for 24 hours, and that's why they're ending up in communities, hotels and so on. I do think we do need to detain everybody who comes on a small boat. I think we could do that at Manston if we could get the planning permission. We could have a short-term and a long-term hold. When I was an immigration officer back in the day, that's exactly what we did, Julia. We used to find illegal immigrants, detain them and remove them from the territory upon the authority of a chief immigration officer. So I think there's something about the detention estate. We've been done time and time again by inspections at various places, haven't we? You name it, any accommodation centre, any detention centre, Napier Barracks, the Bibby Stockholm, someone's come along and said, we can't keep them here for one reason or another. We need to get around all of that stuff and say we will detain them, and they will be detained in secure accommodation pending deportation. But we haven't got the spaces right now. We've got to start doing that. I'd do it at Manston. The Home Office owned that site. They could stay there. We could arrest people, take them to Manston, and then I would remove them swiftly.
And how many people could you? How many people could you house there? I mean, again, if we're not talking, one of the issues with detention centres we previously had, when it was much smaller numbers, was that people's asylum claims and appeal were taking months and months on end. And the argument was, well, you can't keep these people in these conditions for months on end. But these are conditions that would be perfectly acceptable to keep people in for a few weeks, say.
Yeah, so we've got short-term holds for 5 days, and we have longer-term holds for those. That's how it's split. It shouldn't take that long to remove people from the territory, provided he does all the things he says he's going to do with the legal framework, which is massive, Julia, because he's talking about demurring from all of the international conventions that we're subject to. As I say, we used to do this back in the 70s, but ever since then, our laws have been actually penetrated by interpretations of the Asylum Convention, the Human Rights Convention, the Torture Convention. In fact, an immigration officer right now, if they arrest someone either at the border or inland, they're going to have to let them go pretty well straight away, because a lawyer's going to come in and lodge some sort of a complaint. Now, you've got to get on. How you can do that then? You've got to be very, very bold in your legislation, and you've got to say, right, from day one, if we get elected, from day one, we are going to repeal. We're going to strip back all of the legislation to the original Immigration Act 1971. We will not entertain an asylum application, a human rights application, or any other application under international law from anybody who comes from a safe country like.
Won't that itself be challenged under the human rights legislation, though? That's the problem.
It's going to get. I don't know what it's going to do with the House of Lords.
Well, again, there is an element. I mean, people say the House of Lords is part of the establishment. I mean, look, you've got the blob. You've got way more blob than that around this, the House of Lords. But the House of Lords, if this was a manifesto commitment, and if Reform won a big majority, or any majority at all, they would not constitutionally, conventionally wise, be able to actually stop that, but they could delay it a long time.
Yeah, but we had that with Rwanda, and look what happened. I mean, there was 2 years of filibustering in the Lords. They sent it back time and time again. The Sunak government weren't bold enough. They didn't listen to Suella Braverman and Rob Jenrick on some of the amendments they put forward. They were on the right lines, but you have to give the Immigration Service and the Border Force the powers and the authorities they need to arrest, detain and deport. It's no good saying you're going to do it and having an announcement politically if as soon as we start doing it. The lawyers jump in again. And we cannot put the Home Secretary in contempt of court. We have to act within the law.
Yeah, I mean, it does seem to be very simple and straightforward to most of us. The trouble is, of course, we are looking at the scale, and particularly also the amount of time that people might need to be held. Now, if there was if there was a change in the law, so as they were proposing, that basically, if there was a change in the law under the Tories, if you arrive by this boat route, that makes you a criminal. It's already illegal to do that. But they basically want to make a new offence. It's illegal entry. If you arrive illegally, you can never claim asylum. You will not be an option open to you. So you don't need to have an appeal or anything like that. It's not an option, not going to happen. Do you think some of those simple changes in the law, that they make the crucial difference? Or do you actually think that for the people who are coming here, the gangs who are telling them, oh, it's come to the land of milk and honey in Britain, that they would actually have to see it on their mobile phones themselves in the Calais camps, that these people were, and back home in Somalia or wherever, that these people were not going to be able to stay. They're in a camp, they're not working, for Uber and Deliveroo, and they're being deported home?
Yeah, exactly. There are already provisions in the current laws to exclude people from the asylum system if they've come from a safe third country. But a lot of that's being unpicked by this government because they've just repealed the Illegal Migration Act. And and that's the main purpose of this current legislation, is to unpick Rwanda and give us that and say everybody will be allowed to claim asylum. But that's not a given, Julia. I mean, there have been precedents where we can say, well, actually, if you've come from a safe country, you're not going to be admitted into our asylum system. What we have done, though, is always allowed it in our human rights system and into our torture convention. So what Farage is going to have to do is to find a way of getting around that and saying, well, actually, you're not going to be in. Now, there will be huge opposition to that. You will get callers going nuts about this from the left, saying you can't do that. This is international law. You're tearing up our own legal constitutional principles. So it's a massive, massive undertaking. But I think it's feasible. I think it's doable with a very, very bold approach from a new government and one that demonstrates we are removing people when they come off a boat. And you guys need to be out there filming that. Yeah. So when they go back, that message will get across then. So there's no point me going, if I'm going to end up in Rwanda or back home, I'm going to stay in Calais, right? Yeah. That is the removals deterrent that I've been advocating from day one. We need a removals deterrent. At the moment, we haven't got one. The messages that are going back on the WhatsApp groups, on Instagram, I say, just get in a boat, get over here and look, Bob's your uncle.
Yeah, and they're quite right, because you can stay here. And in terms of the actual deportations, now what they're saying is, we'll have voluntary deportations and we'll give you $2,500 and a free flight, but you go, because that's actually, you think, well, why are we doing that? Well, because it costs a heck of a lot less. I mean, by a lot less to do it that way. But if not, we will forcibly detain you. We are going to deport you. We are talking about people being, dragged, kicking and screaming in handcuffs up the plane steps. Are we going to have the planes, the crew willing to take them? And are the countries we try and take them to going to be willing to take them? And is there an issue for you about deporting people to countries like Afghanistan, like Syria, like Iran?
Well, I would go for the twin track option of having removal to the source country. That might be places like India, Pakistan, Vietnam. You look at the cohorts. These are countries that, generally speaking, are safe. Yeah. There may be individual cases who say, well, I'm a member of this group or that group, but you could say it's feasible to return to those countries. For the much harder countries like Syria, Iran, Iraq, these people may well have a genuine claim for asylum, but it doesn't mean they have to stay here. They could go to somewhere like Rwanda and make a new life. And that's why I was a big advocate of the Rwanda plan, a bit like Operation
If it was on scale, though, not with a couple of hundred people.
No, I know, but I think that deterrent, we'll never know now whether that deterrent would have worked. But I think that was a really good move to say, look, you're not going to get to stay here. You're not getting into us. If we can't send you back to France, they won't have it, apart from this 1-17 deal or whatever it is. We can't send you back to your own country because it's being ruled by a bunch of complete, despots who will treat you badly. A lot of that's what the legal framework will say. Well, then we're going to send you to another country. And I went to Kigali a couple of times. It's a lovely place, right? It's really nice. They want people to come, and the only thing they said is, we don't want your criminals, actually, thank you.
Yeah, the thing is, we don't want them and no one wants them. That's the thing, we're stuck with our own ones. Let's not import them. Can I ask you, as someone who's worked, a senior figure at the UK Border Force, there's been a lot of talk about how we shouldn't scapegoat migrants. Now, again, there's a difference between legal migrants and illegal migrants, people who overstay and people who don't. But in terms of the illegal migrants, those who are arriving by the small boats, smuggling the back of the lorry, that's still an issue as well. And people who are getting here on dodgy visas, fake visas and the like. What is the level of criminality in your considerable professional experience? Because not every single one of these men is a rapist or a child abuser or the like, but we have seen that a scale of criminality, allegations and proven convictions, there's court cases going on right now, which are very troubling for people.
Yeah, what troubles me is that we just don't know when they come to us, Julia, who they are or what their criminal backgrounds are. We can do an Interpol check, we do a biometric check, but you never know if somebody is coming from a place where they've done something dreadful, or also whether they're, come from a culture which, has a completely alien culture to ours in terms of the treatment of women and children. And when released in the community without proper training and proper education, can misbehave and find themselves falling foul of the local community. So, I mean, we really need to thoroughly vet and screen everybody, and that goes back to detention again, not same day 24-hour throughput with 1,000 a day. We need to have them for a good period of time where we have experts talk to them, look at them, analyse them and determine whether or not they're suitable for temporary admission in the first place. So I would want to do that, but I think the key to all of this is as they say, detain them, and the premise, the standard process will be you will be removed from this country because you have entered illegally. That is not an unreasonable feasible premise. It's something I worked on for a great many years, and it's perfectly practical. And I'm sure immigration enforcement and border force will be very happy to implement those rules, but they need the legal framework, and that's what we've done.
You say things that's doable, but you need to be bold. Nigel Farage has already, in some comments today, sort of rode back on some of his comments about people ask, are you going to deport women and children as well? Now we know that the vast majority are young men, but speaking today, he said that was not his plan. He said, I was very, very clear yesterday in what I said, that deportation of illegal immigrants, we're not even discussing women and children at this stage. Asked if women and children would be exempt from deportation, he said, I didn't say exempt forever, but at this stage it's not part of our plan for the next 5 years. Although yesterday he did say they would be detained, but the priority for deportations would be adult males. I mean, I'm pretty sure everyone would agree with that, wouldn't they?
Well, most of our detention estate is only capable of holding adult males, Julia. Yeah. There is a very small facility at Yarl's Wood which does hold females. We're not allowed to detain families, actually. That's been outlawed for some years now. So we would have to review all of that in terms of how we keep in touch with them. And I'm not saying bail should be ruled out entirely for everybody. I mean, there may be certain cases we say we'll have reporting restrictions or some other, in-country monitoring systems to look after, to ensure people stay in touch. But I think the big problem that we're all talking about here is a very, very significant number, a very large number of working age males who we don't know who they are, who are simply walking into our country through a very brief vetting process and staying here indefinitely. I think that's the problem we're going to reverse. And in order to do that, you need to be really, really bold in terms of your detention policy and in terms of your removals policy.
And clearly also, given we're told, correct me if I'm wrong, that 90% of these men don't have documentation on them, whether or not they've thrown it away, they've given it to or it's been taken by the people smugglers so they can use that, to get them to work for them and the like. But I mean, if we don't know who someone is, we can't vet them.
Well, that's why they throw their passport. People say, why do they throw their passport? The passport tells you a story, Julia. It tells you who they are, how old they are, what country they've come from, what countries they've been to. A whole raft of stuff that's really useful for us, and they throw that away deliberately to give us another story. Actually, they don't necessarily tell you who they are, where they're from, or where they've been, because that don't suit them. The smugglers train them in what to say to defeat border control. So we need to find a way around that. Okay. It's an offence to enter this country without an entry clearance. That's why they're illegal entrants. They're entering in breach of the immigration laws, and they could be detained. But the fact is that as soon as we detain them, then there will immediately be access to a lawyer, a solicitor who will apply for bail, and will know my client has got a claim of human rights. We don't know whether they have or haven't, and we can only go by what they say because there's no third-party evidence such as a for us to rely on, and that's the problem.
Yeah. And you've said to me before that actually one of the solutions that this Labour government is looking at is of course, they're going to deal with the backlog. We've got 180,000 in the backlog now, something like that, and they'll deal with that by basically letting people stay. But they perhaps won't be all given asylum. I think half the people who arrive on the boats have already they've applied for and failed to get asylum in other European countries, but they're given sort of indefinite leave to stay anyway. How does that work?
Well, they're granted exceptional leave to remain outside of the asylum system, Julia, because it's simply too difficult to remove them for one reason or another. Then
they go off that sort of particular cost in the Home Office.
Yeah, but
so then they just go on the benefits list.
Well, they are then, if they've got if they've got exceptional leave to remain, then they're on Code 1. That means they can work. That means they're entitled to everything we're entitled to. Doesn't mean they're going to be allowed to stay forever. I mean, what they're saying, maybe in 5 years' time, in a regime change in your country, we could send you back. But for the next 5 years, you can stay.
But we rarely do.
You're either going to get asylum or ELTR once you come off a boat. That's basically what's happening. You could grant your way out of this, Julia. That's what they could do. They could say, well, all this what do we mean by processing cases quickly? Well, it's very quick to grant one up to do that now. You could do that now, just stamp a passport.
Waiver one, then we've got no asylum backlog, no problem at all. Yeah.
Absolutely. But then what's happening to all the people? Well, they're all still in the communities. They're still putting pressures on your welfare state, your housing, your National Health Service. So people need to understand what's going on. And that is what is happening. If you're granting your way out of this, then people need to have that.
Yeah, absolutely. Can I ask you, one of our guests earlier, and I know we've got a caller who wants to talk about this as well, James Ball, is sort of, very pro, I'd say this to sort of Ramona rather than even a Remainer. And he says, look, all these problems we've got, this massive number of people who've arrived in this country and their inability to deport them, it's all because of Brexit. You're the expert, is it?
Nonsense. Absolute nonsense. Look up the figures. Dublin Convention, That was the EU agreement for third-party asylum removals. We ended up taking more people in under the Dublin Convention than we ever removed, mainly back from Ireland, actually. More intake than output. We only ever removed about 50 cases to France in my entire experience of the Dublin Conventions, because the fact is you had to prove that they claimed asylum in that third country. And how do you prove that? Unless they're going to give you a Eurodac hit, or they're going to tell you the only ones that ever played ball were the Germans and the Dutch. We got a few there, and in the early days, Italy and Greece. But then the EU woke up and said, well, we're not going to tell the Brits that this person's claimed asylum here, are we? Because you know what's going to happen.
We're going to get them back. Very interesting to have you prepare that. And just finally, we've got this one in, one out policy, and we're told that people have been detained already for that. But now it could be scuppered by the fact that, in terms of stopping the boats, partly because the French government may fall. What are your concerns there?
I've always said that if we could get a safe third with France and send them back to France, that is plan A. That's perfect, if the French would take them back. Yeah. So give them credit for the first time. He's right. In my experience, and I was in the department for 40 years, and 20 years of that dealing with French asylum applications, they never ever would take anybody back. And we had a gentleman's agreement. If someone turns up from New Haven from Dieppe and didn't have a passport, didn't claim asylum, then we still got a gentleman's agreement. Anyone coming on a small boat, the French have never ever said no, we'll have them back, right? So that is a fact. So to say we're even going to take one back is fair, but one is they need to tip that tipping point. It don't be 1 or 20 or 30. It be thousands. Yeah. If we start seeing thousands going back across the channel, then we might be able to tip it that way. And I would even accept something in return. I would accept something in return.
But it ain't going to happen, is it? Tony Smith, I know you've got to go. It's been a pleasure to speak to you. Always good to talk to someone. He knows his tomatoes. Former head of the UK Border Force, Tony Smith there. Quick reaction from Claire Pearsall to what he had to say. He poo-pooed that Brexit nonsense from James Ball earlier, that's for sure.
Yes, he is. And I remember quite seriously looking at returns under the Dublin scheme.
In the Home Office.
Yeah, and we did. It was a handful of people to places like Belgium and France. Yeah. I think one to Hungary.
Yeah, well done. Memory. Well, well done, everybody, indeed. Going to get your calls up next. Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. Love to hear what you have to say. We'll get some of your texts and your tweets as well. Do you think that Nigel Farage, in his pledge to deport 600,000 legal migrants if he wins power, do you think he's actually going to achieve it? What do you make of him? Well, he says he hasn't rowed back, but he is saying that, women and children will not be a priority. It'll be adult males at first. But yes, women and children will be part of the programme eventually. I mean, seems quite sensible to me. I don't think my priority is deporting the women. I think my priority would be the adult males. Wouldn't it be yours? Love to hear your thoughts on that. Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
It's not just UCL. So many universities. I mean, you'll be hard-pressed to find a university that has said we will be upholding the Supreme Court ruling. But in my opinion, the real story here is the fact that these academics that you say are remaining anonymous because they're fearful of being vilified by their colleagues. I think it's so cowardly, and academics, and I understand, and I do to an extent sympathise with the fear, and I know full well the consequences that come with expressing the opinion that women have the right to single-sex spaces.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon. Well, welcome back to the show. This is Talk. 12:28 is the time. Let's get some of your messages coming in about whether you believe that Nigel Farage will actually be able to deliver on his pledge to deport up to 600,000 legal migrants if he wins power. Donna says, is that it? Are we going to need a lot more than that? Yeah, I think it's a starting point of being realistic. Joe says, not if he sticks to three-page plans. If his plan is solid, he should publish it. I don't think, I mean, even in manifestos, we actually expect to see a massive load of details, certainly 3.5 years out from a general election. I think people need to be a bit realistic about that. Peter says, might not be perfect, but at least he understands what people want, and he's trying. I hear that all the time. Just want somebody to literally have a view to doing this. Yasmin says, of course he can't, and of course he won't. We have all promised something radical. They've all promised something radical, and they're all the same. Oscar says there needs to be more. There's potentially millions in Britain. Maybe he could achieve something. Maybe he can achieve getting rid of some via policy, like stopping welfare to foreigners, but he has to commit more than this. And Sheila says, nowhere near enough. There'll be millions here by 2029. We need that doubled or trebled. Also, we need a pause on all immigration. I also don't trust him anymore after saying he couldn't do it. I cancelled my membership when he said that. And there was that big falling out, wasn't there, between Rupert Lowe and Nigel Farage over that issue. Let's go to the calls. Billy is on the line and he's in Belfast. And Billy, you want to talk about in specific actually that conversation I had with our big Remainer friend James Ball earlier in the show.
Good afternoon, Julia. Yes, I was actually near spitting feathers, as a man says. Absolutely. I mean, that absolute muppet. You know what I mean? Nobody ever mentions, Julia, the fact he blamed Brexit on everything. You know,
I think if he stubs his toe, he blames Brexit, to be fair.
Absolutely. But nobody ever mentions, Julia, we never really got Brexit. And not even so much, you know, they say about over here in Northern Ireland, you know, you got what you wanted, hard Brexit, etc. We didn't. Because from the minute we had to vote, the Remainers, Ramoners, whatever you want to call them, Dominic Grieve, you know, Tony Blair, they were all over in France, over at the EU. If you do this, if you do that, if you do this, you can undermine this, you can undercut that.
Traitors, every single one of them. Traitors.
Instead of getting behind the country and letting Brexit be what it was. But no, they've just blamed everything on Brexit. You know what I mean? And I agree, Nigel Farage is going to maybe have an issue dealing with the blob.
Yeah.
You know, because they are going to do everything they can to stop it, to scupper it. I mean, they did the same with Dominic Raab. Dominic Raab went to go in to the Home Office, and all of a sudden there was all these accusations, and I'm not saying yes or no.
And Priti Patel. They went for every Brexiteer minister.
100%. And that lady you were talking to after, who said that she wasn't sure whenever Richard Tice said about getting rid of civil
human rights,
the civil service guys about mass sackings.
Oh yes, Claire Pearce.
Yes, these guys have got to understand. They're working for the people.
Thank you.
They are not being paid for their opinion.
Thank you.
They're being paid to write things down and do what they're told. If they don't like it, leave.
100% with you. I do not understand why I actively don't want to even know their opinions, and they certainly shouldn't impose it in their workplace. And again, I think we're going to end up in a situation where people are going to have to be sacked or suspended, and there are going to be strikes. And we say, then so be it. You're all out. Come back if you want to do the job properly. They should issue new contracts, making it really clear you'll be required to be politically neutral. And also, none of this sodding rainbow lanyard nonsense either.
Don't even start,
man. All of that. Like, if you don't want to be politically neutral, you're in the wrong job.
100%, yeah. They're being paid to do a job. If they don't want to do it, I mean, it's like me. I do tours and taxi stuff over here in Northern Ireland. I can't get a customer into the car and he tells me, I want to go to the Giant's Causeway. I can't turn around and say, no, I don't want to go to the Causeway. I want to go down to Dublin.
Exactly. It's none of your business. Exactly. I'm completely with you on that. Billy, thank you. Great calls. Really appreciate you joining us. Right now, stay tuned, everyone. This is going to be fun. We are going to be talking about Elon Musk funding the cost of actual legal cases for those who basically allowed and covered up the grooming and rape gangs across our country for many years. We're going to talk to Dr. Rakib Ehsan about that. But before we get to that very serious and important topic, something I would massively support, we're going to have a bit of fun with Rupert Bell. He's Talk's royal correspondent, of course, and he's already, I understand, apoplectic with the fact we've got him to watch Meghan Markle's new Netflix series, which I'm reliably informed is even worse than the first one, but he's watching it so we don't have to. We're going to have a quick break, then come back with us, because I promise you this is going to be great fun. If not for Rupert, definitely for the rest of us. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very good afternoon. Welcome back to the show. I've been looking forward to this all morning. I really, really have. Meghan Markle, you remember her, Duchess of Sussex, doesn't come into the news much because she's very big on privacy for herself and her family, as you'll know. But she has a new series on Netflix, purportedly filmed, of course, in her own home with her own ways of, well, showing us just how to be a wonderful, modern working woman with 2 children, married to, just happens, as we often have done, married a prince, but also, you know, cooking and making bath bombs and all of that. It's called Love, Meghan, and for some bizarre reason Netflix thought it was good to do a second series, even though the first one was something of a flop, especially for the millions they paid for it. Well, let's have a little watch and a listen. I promise it's only 49 seconds, so I think we can probably survive it, of Meghan cooking up, well, I don't know, it's probably what we're all having for dinner this evening, isn't it? A nice little bit of lobster.
The lobster. Come over here, baby.
Called it baby.
We go there. You need to be very careful because they call it spiny lobster for a reason, because it's really spiny. Now, this head, we're gonna cut it in the middle. We put it right here. We do the other cut the other way. And right here, you have the lobster cutting up.
Well done.
Are you okay? Yeah.
I'm good. I can do it. Look, if it's a fish, I can somehow get involved. I don't know when...
I mean, listen, at the end of the day,
It's the circle of life.
it's the circle of life. I'm gonna cut the medallions like this in half, you see?
Do you know who doesn't like lobster?
Who?
My husband.
No way. And you...
Well, that gives you a little taste of the utter pointlessness of this show. And so you don't have to watch it, and I don't have to watch it. Just 49 seconds there, guys. We've got Talks Royal correspondent Rupert Bell to watch it. Rupert, have you survived the morning?
I love lobster. Absolutely adore it. And normally I boil the things. That's the way you normally. But that is
these people going around boiling. I mean, eating. I mean, is lobster? I don't know. You're a posho. Is lobster a normal part of your diet?
No. I have a wife who's from Boston, and lobster in New England is like eating hamburger in this
We're
country.
going to let you off there. I'm not entirely sure that this clip that they put out really shows Meghan as the woman of the people, the people's duchess, as she'd like to think of herself.
Can I just say, this is another, I think there are 8 episodes of drivel. And it's so fake. Suddenly we've got Claire Smith, who did the cooking for the royal wedding, for Meghan and Harry's wedding. And she's a brilliant Michelin-starred chef, but my goodness me, when she had to taste Meghan's salt and vinegar homemade crisp, I've never seen a chef fake it as much. Why would
people be making homemade crisps? I mean, this is people with too much time on their hands.
Well, no, then it gets worse. Then she's dyeing handkerchiefs or something to give to the first lot. And then she's out doing the flowers. But what you do see is, if you're going to have in your own garden your own flowers, you go out and you pick them. Right. But what you've got there, it just basically looks like they've moved the florists to this rented house so that they can decorate. And you see pots of flowers that have been brought in clearly by the production crew for them to play around with. And every setup seems fake. From a British perspective, I'm pretty unaware of who any of them are.
Well, that's it. We were always told it was going to be sort of, Meghan and her celebrity friends. And certainly the last series, we had to talk about it on there somehow. I mean, again, as you know, I managed 5 minutes of her and, I don't know, one of the kids maybe. I blocked it from memory, going down to get some honey from a beehive. Apparently she was absolutely stunned to find that bees make honey, but there we are. And then she started making a bath bomb, and at that point I lost the will to live, and it was either basically killing myself or turning it off. So I went for the turning it off option. But I mean, but this is the thing. The whole she had all these supposed celebs. I mean, there was like a hairdresser and her makeup artist. I mean, she clearly doesn't have any friends, which is what's really sad.
Well, you wait for the Christmas special, which is... You forgot that, haven't you, Julia? Come on.
Is there a Christmas special?
Yeah, there will be. That's part of the new thing. But the thing is, I know I'm not the target market. Well,
true.
You're right. So I've got to say that there may be some people who want to know how to put. It looks like what she was doing. She should have had the children around her. There's no sighting of Harry or the children.
Well, Harry doesn't like lobster, to be fair.
Well, and then we clear how that we've heard about the wedding dinner that they had, and suddenly now Claire Smith is now putting on her chicken wings thing as an after dinner thing, but. They've obviously flown her over to do this. You get the Chrissy Teigen. I think she's married to a famous musician. But every setup, the friends walk in off stage. It's just basically a glorified chat show. She's trying to be the new Martha Stewart. Well, the one thing Martha Stewart had was authenticity. She knew what she was talking about and worked her way up by grafting and then getting into the American consciousness.
Rather than a two-bit actress who married a prince. I mean, that's the thing, it doesn't ring true. I mean, the only two sort of news articles I've seen on this since it's been launched is she's had a pop at the Royals because she had to wear nude tights instead of, I'm assuming, black tights when she was working as a royal. I'm just like, I mean, if that's the worst thing about your in-laws, I think you're doing all right, aren't you?
This is not in my pay grade to discuss what people are wearing, women are wearing on parade, OK? I can talk military uniforms, but I'm out of my depth here. Where this has come from, I've no idea. I'm sure she must have gone on and wearing whatever without tights. It seems fair. I think this is just finding an excuse. Sorry, Julia. You really have set me. You've set me up here to talk about things that I am patently unqualified to talk about. What women wear, and it's, okay, so I'm sorry, but and once again, it just is the shades of it, just bringing up and just showing that she's playing the victim. I had to wear clothes I didn't want.
Get over yourself. I had to wear a hairnet when I worked in a burger bar and I was cutting onions up. That wasn't very pleasant. But this thing, the general thing, did you make it all the way to the end?
Let's just say a lot of fast forwarding was done. And knowing I was coming on this morning, I went to go and have an hour with go and have some workout, and I basically worked out getting angrier and angrier. By the end, I was lifting about 500 kg because I was getting angrier and angrier as I was watching this drivel. Look, I know I'm not the target market. If there's anyone out there who's liking it, please let me know. But from a British perspective, it's not moving the dial, I'm sure. It just has the sense of being inauthentic. Yeah, okay, we don't know the people, but everything is, how wonderful she is in her designer, spotless kitchen. She's wearing designer clothes in the kitchen. Now, I know when you're getting your frying pan out or whatever to do your one-pan spaghetti, you're probably, I would suggest, not necessarily wearing your best frock at the time.
I'm not wearing white silk.
With or without tights. But, I don't think you probably are, because
that's the thing. If one of the biggest accusations against her is that she's fake and that she's fairly fundamentally dishonest, and then she does this show which kind of carries that on. Why did Netflix commission a second series, or do you think they'd already filmed it?
Well, they'd already filmed it.
May as well get some views for it. Already paid for it.
And the worst thing, I saw her, she was picking herbs and things in the biggest hat, the most ungardening-like hat I've ever seen. And if you tell me that those hands, or her hands, have done any proper gardening, then and this is the thing. If we see her out there doing her Monty Don bit or whoever, then we might actually take it and say, right, okay, yeah, she is out there planting and doing. But we never see any of that. All we see is beautiful vegetables from somewhere.
Not in her own garden. Rupert, I've decided one of my favourite things in life is seeing you apoplectic about having to watch Meghan's Netflix series. I really hope there's another series after this now.
Trust me, I'm going to now tend to my wonky courgette, so there we go.
That may or may not be a euphemism. Rupert Bell, it's been an absolute joy. You've cheered me up no end. Talksport correspondent Claire Pearsall, anything to add?
I just want a programme of Rupert talking about women's hats, clothing.
I mean, seriously.
How uncomfortable did he look right there?
I want Rupert on Gogglebox so badly.
He needs to be on our television. That was just awesome. Absolutely. And I'm so pleased he watched it.
Yeah, so we do not have to. 12:46 the time. We're going to talk more serious stuff. We're going to talk about the most serious stuff. Basically, thousands and thousands of men in this country operating grooming rape gangs against young British girls. But why have so many people who basically allowed it to happen, covered it up, tried to stop people investigating it and prosecuting it? Why are they still in their jobs? Why have they never been prosecuted? Well, Elon Musk wants to change that. He wants there to be charges against those people, and he is willing to fund that. We'll talk about that up next with Rakib Hassan. This is Talk.
they have tunnels under hospitals. Or like somebody else said once, they don't build hospitals, they don't build tunnels under hospitals, they build hospitals over tunnels. They've got an incredible amount of hospitals, more than in Israel, because that is the decoy for the actual tunnel opening, which is where they keep their terrorism infrastructure. And of course, like you mentioned, you've got these journalists, some of them are working for Hamas, some of them are sympathetic to Hamas, and some of them are just scared of Hamas.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is indeed Talk, the home of common sense for me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. 12:49 is the time. Let's talk about Elon Musk, not that SpaceX successful flight, but other areas where he is taking a big interest, and certainly he's taken an interest in the grooming gang scandal in this country. It was him who got, retweeted some comments and some information about that at the end of last year, which basically exploded that story back onto our news screens. Story, by the way, which we've been talking about since word go here on this station and I on previous stations as well. And indeed, a story that was really broken in the British media by a Times journalist. But Elon Musk has now said he's willing to fund legal action against corrupt officials who he claims covered up the crimes of grooming gangs. I don't think you have to say he claims. I think we know for sure that has happened. But he said he would donate to help cases against those who aided and abetted the rape of Britain. On an X post, he said, I would like to help fund legal actions against corrupt officials who aided and abetted the rape of Britain per the official government inquiry. Now, we've had got the official government inquiry. We've had a sort of government inquiry that never really looked into the grooming gangs issue. We had Baroness Louise Casey, who has looked into the issue, and she has urged that there should be a full independent public inquiry. We're still waiting to get that off the ground. But we've also got an unofficial inquiry into grooming gangs led by the former Reform UK MP Rupert Lowe. They say that they have found child sexual exploitation not just in a few dozen towns, not just in the 45-50 that some investigators have suggested, but in 85 local authorities across Britain. Well, let's talk about this with Dr. Rakib Hassan. He's a social policy analyst and joins us now. Very good afternoon to you, Rakib.
Good afternoon, Julia. How are you?
Very well indeed. Thanks for joining us. Look, I for one very much welcome this. This sort of echoes also what we have seen with Maggie Oliver, who's the whistleblower in Greater Manchester Police on what happened in her patch, where she's now got an investigation. They've crowdfunded. I've helped retweet that and hope to try and publicise it to get funds to bring legal actions against the police, the social workers, the council officials, all the other people who not only failed to act to prevent these grooming gangs, but also actually actively worked to cover it up.
No, I couldn't agree more. And the reality is the grooming gangs scandal is very much a nationwide one, and various organs of the British state are involved, as you say there, Julia. Police forces, local councils, social services, safeguarding partnerships, and I think even the education system. I think the idea that school teachers and indeed head teachers, they had no idea that this was going on when it came to some of their pupils within their institutions. I just don't buy that at all. So I think here what we're talking about public officials. It's a fundamental dereliction of their duty, especially when it comes to protecting the well-being of some of the most vulnerable members of our society. So I think, and I think, to be honest, whatever people think about Elon Musk, I don't even think that we'll be having a natural statutory inquiry into the grooming gangs unless that he flagged this scourge to begin with next. And
because there was no new information. I would say even Baroness Casey's report, which at least sort of gave some cover to Keir Starmer for going backtracking on his pledge not to have a public national inquiry. But actually, there's no new information. Anyone who's paying attention to this has known all this stuff for many years. And I don't know how many more these young women need to come forward and tell their stories and tell how, it's people say, well, we had no idea. Yeah, you did. They told the people running the care home. They were seen at the school gates getting into the cars with men who were twice their age, giving them cigarettes. They were spotted on the streets. We had a father who called the police, saying, please get my daughter out. She's been gang raped in there. He was arrested by the police. We've had girls turning up pregnant with, literally a fetus removed of the baby, of her, abuse her, and her 12, 13-year-olds, and him not being prosecuted. This has been this has been clear and obvious for anyone to see. These girls were written off as basically as slags. That's what they were written off as. They were expendable to sort of for worrying about community cohesion. I mean, we do need to have prosecutions, don't we? We need to make it clear that if you do allow this to happen, even if you're not perpetrating it yourself, you will face punishment.
No, absolutely. And I think that's something that I've called for some time as well. That at the very least, if people are still in those public sector positions, they need to be removed from those positions.
Yeah.
I think we also need to be talking about loss of pension entitlement. And I think in the most serious cases, we have to be talking about criminal prosecutions as well. Yeah. Against those public sector officials. But I think we're talking about something more sinister than just the cover-ups. I think that we also have to investigate the degree to which public sector officials enabled these heinous crimes, if not directly participated in those crimes
Although
themselves.
in some cases directly participated. Allegations of police officers being involved, and a counsellor who basically instructed everyone not to get involved, who was believed to be involved. I mean, this is it. We're looking at people being charged with. I mean, what would the criminal charges be in some of these cases? Would it be sort of corruption in public office, or what would it be?
No, I think that it would be certainly looking into that kind of. It's ultimately it's abuse of power. I think that's definitely come into it. And I think we have to be very clear here that if you're a public sector official, that comes with some very special responsibilities, especially when it comes to protecting the most vulnerable members of society, of our society as well. I think a true mark of an advanced civilized society is how the most vulnerable are protected, especially by its public institutions. And unfortunately on that front, the grooming gang scandal shows that we're failing miserably on that front.
Yeah, indeed. And again, the key thing of this is it's not a historic crime. This is still happening today. It's very, very clear. People like Maggie Oliver, who've been working on this issue for decades now, and as a whistleblower in Greater Manchester Police, she's very clear that it's still happening today. And one of the interesting things, this with Rupert Lowe, and look, he hasn't got this isn't a grooming gang inquiry in any meaningful sense. He's mounting an investigation. I mean, all for more people do this, the better. All credit to him. But it's not an inquiry in the full sense. You need to have statutory powers. You can't
compel witnesses to stand, for example,
and also for them to be punished if they're proven to lie. These are crucial things. But all credit. But he's talking about this is going on has been going on or is going on in 85 different local authorities across Britain. Now, there's no reason to think it is not going on everywhere. But the key thing is, I've always been amazed by how no one's talked about it happening in London. Sadiq Khan's like, oh no, nothing's happening in London. Why wouldn't it be happening in our capital city when it appears to be happening in every town and city around the country?
No, and I think what's quite remarkable, there's one city that definitely springs to mind which has been thoroughly under-investigated when it comes to grooming gangs, Bradford. I find it absolutely remarkable that you have so many grooming gang scandals in that part of West Yorkshire, yet that Bradford, for example, has been thoroughly under-investigated. Well, I think certainly that London needs to be part of that as well. I believe one of the local authorities that's been identified through Rupert Lowe's private investigation is Brent. So I think that we definitely need to look at the capital as well. And I find it amazing that the Mayor of London, he doesn't want to touch this with a barge pole, to the point that he's always ridiculed people for suggesting that grooming gang activity is taking place in the capital.
Yeah.
So I think it's very important that this is a thoroughly nationwide investigation naturally has to include the capital.
Yeah,
that just makes common sense.
Absolutely. Dr. Rakib Hassan, social policy analyst, thank you very much indeed. Well, Claire Pearsall, just a final word on this. I mean, because it's all about worrying about community cohesion. I think you'd have a lot more community cohesion if people didn't fear that girls were being gang raped and getting away with it.
How about we look at the rights of those girls to have their cases looked at properly? Yeah. People need to be prosecuted, and I think Rakib is absolutely spot on that people need to lose pensions and even be in prison to make this.
I definitely want people in prison. I want people named and shamed for failure to use something.
Absolutely.
And if they say, no, I was a victim, I was being threatened, well, name the person who threatened you then, and we'll go for them. But heads are going to have to roll. And again, all these areas we always need. Whether it's pension scandal, whether it's whether it's infected blood, whether it's post office scandal, whatever it is, you need to have people at the top, and they need to know that they will face justice in the end, because that's how you stop these things happening. Indeed. Big thanks to you, Claire, for joining us throughout the show. It's been a lively one, that's for sure. Ian Collins is with us now. A very, very good afternoon to you.
And thank you too, Claire.
So we're going back to the giggling we've just had. Did you enjoy our little chat with Rupert Bell about Meghan Markle?
I heard some giggling going on.
I mean, that's all I did the whole segment.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that at all.
It involved Meghan, so you usually have to laugh.
We will try and get some. Well, of course, we'll try and get some giggling in there at some point. But there's a lot of serious stuff around, aren't there? I mean, you just Rupert Lowe's going to join us a little later, talking about exactly what you were just discussing there. And of course, we'll ask him about the Farage deal, because you will have seen the numbers.
Yep.
Now people are crunching the numbers.
Yeah.
Farage is going to do it for 10 million. Apparently, when Rupert was going to do something similar, it was 47.5 million.
I mean, billion.
Billion.
Well, yeah, but again, it's interesting, is because Rupert Lowe and Nigel Farage fell out